The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives? Something that exists outside the Force entirely, carrying the blood of gods on its hands and rage older than Republic law? The galaxy would soon learn that some warriors answer to no cosmic power, bow to no council, and serve no cause but their own brutal sense of justice. Above the planet Christophsis, the battle raged with mechanical precision. Republic Venator-class Star Destroyers exchanged turbo-laser fire with Separatist frigates, their shields flickering like dying stars. Clone fighters screamed through the void, hunting vulture droids that twisted and spiraled with inhuman agility. Inside the flagship Resolute, Jedi General Anakin Skywalker coordinated the assault, his presence in the Force guiding clone pilots through impossible maneuvers. The battle followed the pattern of countless others in this galactic war: brutal, calculated, predictable. Then reality screamed. A wound tore open in the fabric of space itself, not the familiar blue tunnel of hyperspace, but something fundamentally wrong. The breach pulsed with colors that had no name, energies that made sensor arrays shriek warnings, and Force-sensitive beings across the battle clutched their heads in sudden, nauseating vertigo. Through this impossible tear, something fell. He tumbled through the void, his scarred form wreathed in the dying light of a dimension left behind. The blades of chaos trailed from his forearms, their chains writhing like living serpents as they sensed the wrongness of this new reality. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, the god of war, killer of Zeus himself, plummeted toward an alien world with no understanding of where or when he had been cast. The artifact he had destroyed in his realm had been a gateway, a door between worlds. He had shattered it to prevent its misuse. Instead, it had used him. His body crashed through the debris field of destroyed Separatist fighters, his divine constitution absorbing impacts that would have vaporized mortal men. A clone pilot's last vision, before ejecting, was of a massive, ash-white figure wreathed in chains and fury, falling like a vengeful meteor toward the crystal planet below. The pilot would later tell his brothers he'd seen a ghost. They wouldn't believe him. Kratos' descent carved a burning trail through Christophsis' atmosphere. The crystal formations that gave the planet its name refracted his entry, creating a display of light that momentarily halted the battle as both sides tried to comprehend what they were witnessing. He struck the planet's surface in the contested zone between Republic and Separatist lines, the impact crater spreading like a wound in the crystalline ground. The Spartan rose from the crater slowly, every muscle coiled and ready. Dust settled around him, revealing a figure that belonged to no species in the Republic's extensive databases. Ash-white skin, marked with red tattoos that seemed to pulse with barely contained violence. A physique sculpted by centuries of warfare. Eyes that had witnessed the death of pantheons. And most striking, the blades of chaos, still burning with the fires of his former realm, their chains fused to his scarred forearms by magic older than this galaxy's oldest civilizations. The first beings to encounter him were a patrol of B-1 battle droids, their programming struggling to classify the threat level of this new contact. "Halt! You are in Separatist-controlled territory. Identify yourself or—" Kratos moved with the fluid brutality of a predator. The blades of chaos sang through the air, their chains extending impossibly as he spun. The first droid split vertically, its photoreceptors still processing visual data as its bisected halves toppled. The second lost its head to a backhand strike that continued into a devastating arc that dismembered three more droids in a single motion. The remaining droids opened fire, their blaster bolts tracking toward the Spartan's center mass. He didn't dodge. The bolts struck his bare chest and shoulders, and for a moment the droid's limited processors might have registered satisfaction at successful hits. Then Kratos kept coming. The energy weapons scorched his skin, drew blood from grazing hits, but his divine constitution absorbed damage that would have killed any normal being. Pain was an old companion. Pain meant nothing. His fist closed around a droid's head, crushing the metal like parchment. He pivoted, using the destroyed droid's body as a shield against incoming fire, while his blade carved through two more attackers. The chains wrapped around the last droid, constricting like serpents until its chassis crumpled. 13 seconds. 12 droids. Silence. Kratos stood among the wreckage, breathing steadily, analyzing his surroundings with the cold assessment of a warrior who had fought in realms beyond counting. The air tasted wrong, recycled, technological. The ground beneath his feet hummed with unfamiliar energy. The weapons these metal constructs wielded were unlike anything from his experience, firing concentrated light rather than arrows or spears. This was not Midgard. This was not any realm he recognized. Above, the battle continued, but Republic sensors had already flagged the anomaly. In the command center of a nearby ATTE Walker, Clone Captain Rex studied the readout with narrowed eyes behind his helmet. General Skywalker, we've got something strange in Sector 7. Unknown contact just tore through a droid patrol. Signature doesn't match any database. Anakin's voice crackled over the comm, intrigued. Life signs? Yes, sir. One. But General, according to these readings, whatever it is just tanked multiple direct blaster hits and kept fighting. There was a pause, then. I'm on my way. Keep your distance but maintain visual. If it's hostile, I want to know what we're dealing with. Kratos heard the approaching vehicles before he saw them. Massive walkers that moved with mechanical precision, accompanied by smaller craft hovering on some form of propulsion he didn't understand. Soldiers in white armor emerged, their weapons trained on him with disciplined efficiency. Unlike the skeletal machines he'd destroyed, these moved with organic purpose. Behind their helmets, human eyes assessed the threat. On the ground, now! The command came from one soldier whose armor bore distinctive markings. Authority earned through combat, Kratos recognized. A warrior, not a puppet. The Spartan remained standing, chains coiling slowly around his forearms as he studied these new potential enemies. They moved as a unit, covered each other's angles, maintained firing lanes, trained, disciplined. In another life, he might have led such men. In this moment, he simply needed to understand where he was and how to survive long enough to find answers. Then the air itself seemed to shift, and two figures descended from a Republic gunship with an ease that spoke of powers beyond the physical. The first was young, clad in dark leather and robes, a cylinder of metal hanging from his belt that Kratos instinctively recognized as a weapon. The second was older, bearded, his presence radiating a calm authority that reminded the Spartan of priests he had killed in ages past. Obi-Wan Kenobi felt the absence before he saw the warrior. In the Force, this scarred figure existed as a void, not dark, not light, simply nothing, as if reality itself curved around him without touching. It was profoundly disturbing. Beside him, Anakin's hand drifted toward his lightsaber, sensing the same wrongness. I am Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi of the Grand Army of the Republic, the bearded man said, his voice measured and diplomatic. You're standing in an active war zone. We mean you no harm, but we need to understand who and what you are. Kratos' gaze fixed on the older warrior, reading the subtle tells that transcended language and dimension. This one commanded respect from his soldiers. This one had seen battle but approached with words first. Diplomat and warrior both, the younger one. However, that one's hand hovering near his weapon told a different story. Eager, powerful, dangerous. The Spartan's voice emerged like grinding stone, speaking words in a tongue that should not exist in this galaxy, yet somehow found translation through the strange technology these beings possessed. I am Kratos. I seek no war with you, but I will end anyone who stands between me and understanding where I am. Anakin stepped forward, his instincts screaming warnings that had nothing to do with the Force. That's not really how first contact works. You just destroyed separatist droids in Republic-contested territory. That makes you either an ally or an enemy combatant. So which is it? The ghost of Sparta looked at the young warrior, seeing the barely leashed aggression, the confidence bordering on arrogance, the raw power contained in mortal flesh. It was a mirror of himself in younger, angrier days. I am neither your ally nor your enemy unless you make me one. I did not choose to be here, but I will not kneel to your authority while I remain ignorant of this place. Rex's voice came through on the private command channel. General, we've got separatist reinforcements inbound. If this individual is going to be a problem, we need to know now. Obi-Wan raised a calming hand toward both Anakin and the mysterious warrior. Three wars, the one against the separatists, the potential conflict with this powerful stranger, and the war of pride between Anakin's impatience and his own diplomatic instincts. Kratos, that is your name? We can provide answers, but we're about to be in the middle of a battle. If you wish to understand where you are, I suggest we continue this conversation somewhere less exposed to artillery fire. The Spartan heard the wisdom in this. He had fought enough battles to recognize when ground was indefensible. I will hear your words, but know this. I have killed gods and toppled pantheons. If your republic seeks to cage or command me, you will learn why they called me the Ghost of Sparta. As if summoned by his words, the horizon lit with the approach of separatist ARATs, their cannons already charging. The Clone Wars continued, indifferent to the arrival of one more warrior. But Obi-Wan Kenobi, watching this scarred figure stride toward their gunship with the confidence of someone who had walked through far worse hells than this, felt a disturbance that went beyond the Force. They had just welcomed aboard something that existed outside the natural order of their galaxy, something that killed gods. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Republic gunship's troop bay hummed with tension as it lifted from the crystalline battlefield, escaping the advancing separatist column. Kratos stood rather than sat, his massive frame filling the space in a way that made even the battle-hardened clone troopers unconsciously shift away. The blades of chaos hung at his sides, their flames dimmed but never fully extinguished, chains clinking softly with the gunship's movements. Through the open bay doors, the Spartan watched the alien landscape fall away. Crystal spires that caught the light of twin suns, metal walkers exchanging fire with hover tanks, and above it all, ships locked in combat among the stars. Obi-Wan observed their passenger with the careful attention of a man who had negotiated with Hutts, reasoned with bounty hunters, and faced Sith Lords. This Kratos was none of those things. The Force read him as absence, a hole in the cosmic tapestry that shouldn't exist. More troubling was the way Anakin kept glancing at the warrior, his presence in the Force agitated like disturbed water. His former Padawan sensed something in this stranger that resonated with his own barely controlled aggression. You mentioned gods, Obi-Wan began carefully, pitching his voice to be heard over the gunship's engines. In our galaxy, we have the Force, an energy field created by all living things that binds the galaxy together. Some, like myself and my companion Anakin, can sense and channel this force. You, however, he paused, choosing his words with diplomatic precision. You exist outside it entirely. Kratos' eyes fixed on the Jedi Master, reading the subtle discomfort in his tone. Your force is one power among many. In my world, I walked among beings who called themselves gods. Zeus, Ares, Athena. They wielded lightning, commanded the dead, bent mortals to their will with whispers and visions. His scarred hand clenched into a fist. I killed them all. If your force demands worship or servitude, it will learn the same lesson. Anakin's hand moved to his lightsaber unconsciously. The Force isn't something you fight or kill. It's everywhere, in everyone. Even if you can't feel it, it connects all living. I am connected to nothing I do not choose, Kratos interrupted, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who had severed every bond that sought to control him. I was a slave to gods, to rage, to vengeance. I broke those chains. This force of yours may touch everything in your galaxy, but it does not touch me. Captain Rex, standing near the cockpit, spoke up with the practical directness of a soldier. With respect, sir, can we focus on whether this individual is hostile to Republic forces? Because we've got tactical concerns that matter more than philosophy right now. It was a fair point, and Obi-Wan nodded acknowledgement. Indeed. Kratos, you destroyed separatist battle droids. That was decisive. But you claimed you don't seek war with us? Help us understand your capabilities and intentions. What exactly are you? The Spartan's gaze swept across the clones, noting how they held their weapons with casual readiness, how they moved as extensions of each other despite being individual beings. I am what I was made to be, a warrior. In my realm, I served the god of war, Ares, until he betrayed me. I killed him and took his place. I then killed the king of the gods, Zeus, and watched Olympus fall. Your metal soldiers were in my path. I removed them. The silence that followed was profound. One clone trooper's grip tightened on his DC-15 blaster, the slight movement catching Kratos' attention. These soldiers didn't believe him. Why would they? But the older warrior, Obi-Wan, his expression had shifted from diplomatic curiosity to genuine concern. "You're saying you were a god?" Anakin asked, skepticism clear in his voice. I was a weapon wielded by gods, then became the thing I hated, then ended that existence entirely." Kratos' tone carried the weight of centuries. "I am mortal again, or as mortal as something that killed divinity can be. But I retain strength, endurance, and skill earned through ages of war." He extended his arms, the blades of chaos responding to subtle muscle movements. "These weapons are bound to my flesh by Ares' curse. They have killed immortals. They exist beyond your force." Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully, a habit when processing complex situations. The Jedi Council needed to hear about this immediately. A being outside the Force, claiming to have destroyed gods, even if metaphorical or from some unknown Force tradition, represented an unknown variable in a war already balanced on a knife's edge. But interrogating the warrior while in transport seemed unwise. Better to establish basic understanding first. "The metal soldiers you destroyed are called battle droids," Obi-Wan explained, opting for information exchange over confrontation. "They serve the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the Separatists, who are at war with the Galactic Republic. This conflict has consumed thousands of worlds over the past 3 years. We fight to preserve democracy and freedom across the galaxy." Kratos heard the conviction in the words, but also recognized the practiced nature of the speech. Propaganda dressed as truth. Every government claimed righteous cause. "And who leads your republic? What do they gain from this war?" The question struck closer than the Spartan could know. Anakin shifted uncomfortably, and even Obi-Wan's diplomatic mask showed cracks. "The Republic is led by Chancellor Palpatine, democratically elected by the Galactic Senate. The war was thrust upon us when the Separatists—" "Thrust upon you," Kratos repeated, the words heavy with ironic knowledge. "Wars are never thrust upon the powerful. They are crafted, shaped, and unleashed when those in control stand to benefit." He looked directly at Obi-Wan. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched gods play with mortal lives like game pieces. Your face tells me you suspect the same about this war, even if you serve it faithfully." Obi-Wan met the Spartan's gaze and saw something unexpected. Not hostility, but wary recognition. This being, whatever he truly was, had witnessed corruption at the highest levels of power. The Jedi Master found himself dangerously close to agreeing with sentiments that bordered on treason to the Republic they served. "The situation is complicated, but we are soldiers and we have our duty." "Duty?" The word emerged from Kratos like a curse and a prayer simultaneously. "I know duty. I know what men tell themselves when they follow orders that lead to ashes and blood." His attention shifted to the clone troopers, really seeing them for the first time. "You wear identical armor. You move as one. You were bred for this war." Rex stiffened, his voice carefully neutral. "Clone troopers are grown from the genetic template of Jango Fett, the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy. We're trained from birth to serve the Republic. It's an honor." The ghost of Sparta heard the rehearsed pride, but also something underneath, a question the soldier himself might not recognize. Kratos had been forged into a weapon by Ares, raised from childhood to know only war. He recognized the signs of engineered servitude masked his purpose. You had no choice in your creation or your service, yet you claim honor in bonds you never consented to forge. "That's enough," Anakin said sharply, his hand now fully on his lightsaber. "Rex and his brothers are the finest soldiers in the galaxy. They're not slaves." Kratos' eyes narrowed at the young warrior's defensiveness. Then they are free to refuse orders, free to leave this war, free to forge their own paths? The silence answered his questions. A warrior who cannot choose his battles serves at the pleasure of masters, no matter how noble the cause they're fed. The gunship's atmosphere had gone from tense to openly hostile. Captain Rex's jaw clenched behind his helmet, processing words that struck at foundations he'd never questioned. The other clones shifted, uncertain whether to defend their honor or acknowledge a truth they'd never been permitted to examine. Anakin's presence in the Force crackled with barely restrained anger. Seeing this stranger's words as an attack on men, he fought beside and commanded. Only Obi-Wan maintained composure, though his mind raced through implications. The Jedi Order commanded an army of beings created solely for war, beings with no choice in their existence or fate. It was a moral complexity the Council had rationalized away as necessity, but hearing it framed so bluntly by an outsider made it impossible to ignore. Your observations are noted, though your understanding of our situation is incomplete. The clone troopers are valued members of the Republic military. Valued weapons, Kratos corrected. I know the difference. I was both. He turned away from the Jedi, addressing Rex directly. You are warriors, I respect that, but never confuse loyalty to brothers in arms with loyalty to those who created you for slaughter. One is earned, the other is programmed. Before Rex could respond, the gunship pilot's voice cut through the tension. Approaching Republic Forward Operating Base. ETA 2 minutes. General Kenobi, General Skywalker, Command is requesting immediate debrief on the anomaly. Obi-Wan welcomed the interruption, though he knew the conversation was far from over. As the gunship descended toward a military installation of prefabricated structures and parked walkers, he considered how to present this situation to the Council. A warrior from beyond the Force, possessing considerable physical power and an unsettling ability to articulate uncomfortable truths about the Republic's moral compromises. The Separatists would see him as a potential weapon. The Jedi would see him as a potential threat, and Kratos himself seemed to care nothing for either faction's concerns. The gunship settled on the landing pad with a hydraulic hiss. As the bay doors opened, Kratos stepped out into the twin sunlight of Christophsis, chains clinking softly. Clone troopers immediately surrounded the landing zone, weapons ready but not aimed. A defensive perimeter around an unknown element. Anakin moved to stand beside Obi-Wan, his voice low. Master, this is dangerous. He's powerful, he doesn't respect our authority, and he's already turning the men against their own service. We should contain him until the Council decides. Contain him? Obi-Wan asked quietly, watching the Spartan scan his surroundings with the tactical assessment of a born warrior. With what? Stun weapons he'd likely shrug off? A holding cell he could probably tear apart? And if we tried, we'd confirm every suspicion he has about authority seeking to cage those it cannot control. He stroked his beard again. No, Anakin. Right now, Kratos is simply trying to understand where he is. Let's provide him that understanding before we make an enemy where we might have found, if not an ally, then at least a neutral party. But even as Obi-Wan spoke the words, he felt the disturbance in the Force growing stronger. Across the galaxy, Sith Lord Count Dooku had just received a report from Christophsis. An unknown warrior, powerful beyond measure, outside the Force entirely. Dooku's master, the shadowy Darth Sidious, would want to know about this immediately. And when Sith Lords took interest in something, blood inevitably followed. The Republic Forward Base on Christophsis sprawled across cleared crystalline terrain like a military infection. Temporary structures, artillery emplacements, and rows of ATTE walkers standing sentinel against the Separatist advance. Clone troopers moved with efficient purpose, their white armor stark against the planet's translucent landscape. Kratos walked through this organized chaos flanked by Jedi and clones, drawing stares from every soldier they passed. Word spread faster than blaster fire. Something impossible had fallen from the sky. They entered the command center, a prefabricated structure humming with holographic displays and tactical readouts. Officers, clones marked by colored shoulder pauldrons denoting rank, stood at attention as the Jedi generals entered, but their eyes tracked the scarred giant with barely concealed wariness. Captain Rex moved to brief his commanding officers while Obi-Wan gestured for Kratos to approach the central holotable. "This is the galaxy," Obi-Wan said, activating a display that showed countless star systems rotating in miniature. Over 50 million inhabited worlds, trillions of sentient beings, governed until recently by the Galactic Republic for over 1,000 generations. 3 years ago, thousands of systems seceded under Count Dooku's Confederacy of Independent Systems. We've been at war ever since. Kratos studied the hologram with the same intensity he'd once brought to understanding the architecture of Olympus or the realms of Norse gods. Maps meant territory. Territory meant power. Power meant those who sought to hold it and those who would tear it down. You command armies across thousands of worlds, yet you call yourselves peacekeepers. Your weapons contradict your words. Anakin crossed his arms, irritation evident. We didn't start this war. The Jedi served the Republic to protect innocent lives from separatist aggression. Sometimes peace requires force. Peace through force is simply conquest with prettier language, Kratos replied without looking at the young Jedi. His attention fixed on the hologram's representation of battle lines, territories marked in blue and red, a galaxy literally divided. I have heard such justifications from Athens, from Sparta, from gods who claim dominion over mortals for their own good. It always ends the same way, in blood and ashes. Obi-Wan deactivated the galactic display, replacing it with a more immediate tactical map of Christophsis. Your philosophy aside, we need to establish practical realities. You possess considerable combat capability. You exist outside the Force in ways we don't understand. That makes you an asset the Separatists will try to capture or kill, and an unknown variable the Republic must evaluate. For your own safety and ours, I'm requesting you remain here under Republic protection until— I am not asking for protection, Kratos interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. And I do not require evaluation like some captured beast. I will remain because I choose to gather information about this galaxy. The moment I decide otherwise, your request becomes meaningless. The temperature in the command center seemed to drop. Clone officers' hands drifted toward sidearms. Anakin's presence in the Force spiked with barely controlled anger at this outsider's continued disrespect. Even Obi-Wan's diplomatic patience showed strain. But before the situation could escalate, Captain Rex stepped forward with a soldier's directness. "Sir, if I may," Rex addressed Obi-Wan while keeping Kratos in his peripheral vision. "We've got wounded from the morning's engagement. Medical Bay is overwhelmed. If this individual wants to understand our situation, maybe he should see what we're actually fighting for, the lives we're trying to save." It was a tactical de-escalation disguised as a practical suggestion, and Obi-Wan recognized it immediately. Show Kratos the human cost of war rather than military abstractions. Appeal to whatever moral code drove this god-killer to spare Republic forces when he could have carved through them. An excellent suggestion, Captain. Kratos, our medics are treating wounded clone troopers and civilian refugees. Perhaps that will provide context beyond tactical displays. The Spartan regarded Rex with new assessment. The clone captain had recognized the building confrontation and redirected it with the skill of an experienced warrior. Not just a soldier following orders, a thinking combatant who understood that some battles were won without weapons. "Show me." They left the command center, Rex leading the way through the base's organized chaos. Anakin remained behind to coordinate defensive positions, though his frustration rippled through the Force like heat shimmer. Obi-Wan walked beside Kratos, sensing an opportunity to understand this enigmatic warrior without the pressure of military evaluation. "You mentioned killing gods," the Jedi Master said conversationally. "In our galaxy, we have legends of beings of immense power, the Celestials, the Ones, ancient Force wielders who shaped reality. But gods in the sense you describe, we have no equivalent. The Force is not sentient, not something one can kill." Kratos' expression darkened with old memory. "The gods I knew were sentient. They loved, they hated, they manipulated mortal lives for entertainment and pride. Zeus called himself father while condemning his children to torment. Ares turned me into a weapon and then discarded me when I no longer served his purpose." His chains shifted slightly, responding to his emotional state. Your force may not think, but those who wield it will use it to control others. That is what power does to beings who believe themselves above consequence. The Jedi Code exists specifically to prevent such corruption, Obi-Wan replied. We teach detachment, selflessness, service to others before self. The dark side of the Force, emotion, passion, selfishness, leads to tyranny. But the light side, properly followed, creates balance. Balance through denial of self, Kratos observed. Sparta taught similar discipline. Emotion was weakness. The individual existed only to serve the state. Such philosophy creates warriors without humanity, tools that serve until they break. He glanced at the Jedi. Your clone soldiers, born without choice, raised without families, taught that service is honor and obedience is virtue. You see no parallel to your own philosophy? Obi-Wan's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. The observation struck uncomfortably close to doubts he'd harbored, but never voiced. The Jedi raised children from infancy, teaching them to suppress attachment and emotion, molding them into servants of the Force and Republic. The clones were created for war, taught to value duty above self. The methods differed, but the fundamental approach. They reached the medical bay before Obi-Wan could formulate a response. The large tent structure hummed with bacta-tanks and medical droids attending to wounded. Clone troopers lay on cots, some missing limbs, others burned by blaster fire or shrapnel. Medical personnel moved with practiced efficiency, but the sheer number of casualties overwhelmed their capacity. And in a cordoned section, civilian refugees from Christophelus's capital huddled. Families caught between Republic and Separatist forces, their homes destroyed in the crossfire. Kratos stood at the entrance, taking in the scene with eyes that had witnessed countless battlefields. The smell of bacta, cauterized flesh, and fear was universal across dimensions. Suffering wore the same face whether in ancient Greece or this alien galaxy. A clone medic noticed their arrival and approached, his armor marked with red crosses. General Kenobi, we've stabilized most of the critical cases, but we're running low on bacta and synthetic tissue. If we don't get resupply within 12 hours, the medic stopped, noticing Kratos. Sir, is that the anomaly from Sector 7? This is Kratos, Obi-Wan confirmed. He's here to observe. Carry on with your duties. The medic hesitated, then returned to his patients. Kratos moved deeper into the medical bay, his massive presence drawing fearful glances from wounded soldiers and civilians alike. He stopped beside a clone trooper whose armor had been removed, revealing extensive burns across his torso. The soldier's eyes tracked the Spartan with the glassy awareness of heavy pain medication. What is your name? Kratos asked, his harsh voice somehow gentler than before. The clone blinked in confusion. CT-7488, sir. My brothers call me Denal. Denal, Kratos repeated, using the chosen name rather than the designation. You chose this name yourself? Yes, sir. After my first battle. It means survivor in Old Mandalorian. The clone's voice carried faint pride despite his pain. All clones get numbers, but we pick our own names. Makes us more than just copies. Kratos studied the wounded warrior, seeing the desperate assertion of individuality in a sea of identical faces and bodies. These soldiers were bred to die in a war orchestrated by others, yet they grasped at personhood through something as simple as choosing a name. It reminded him of Spartans earning their shields, of warriors carving identity from the killing machinery that created them. You fight well, Denal, Kratos said simply. Survive this. Die on your own terms, not theirs. The clone's eyes widened at the strange blessing, or curse, but before he could respond, Kratos moved on. He walked past rows of wounded, noting the casual acceptance of injury and death, the way soldiers joked despite missing limbs, the medics working themselves to exhaustion for brothers they'd never met but recognized as kin. These were not the mindless automatons he'd first assumed. They were men, manufactured men, but men nonetheless, trying to forge meaning from servitude. In the civilian section, a Twi'lek child watched Kratos approach with wide eyes. The child's mother pulled her daughter closer, fear evident despite the supposed safety of the Republic base. The Spartans stopped at a respectful distance, recognizing the protective instinct that transcended species and dimensions. You lost your home, Kratos stated rather than asked. The mother nodded, her leku twitching with anxiety. The separatists took our district. The Republic bombed it to deny them resources. We had minutes to evacuate. Her arms tightened around her daughter. I don't understand why we're here. We didn't choose sides. We just wanted to live. Kratos knelt, bringing himself to the child's eye level, despite his intimidating appearance. War does not care about choices. It consumes the innocent alongside the guilty. Your mother is wise to hold you close. When powers greater than yourself wage conflict, survival is the only victory that matters. The child's fear didn't diminish. How could it, facing this scarred giant? But something in Kratos' tone conveyed hard-earned truth rather than threat. The mother's expression shifted from pure terror to uncertain evaluation. This fearsome warrior spoke as one who understood loss, not one who inflicted it carelessly. Obi-Wan watched the exchange with growing complexity of thought. Kratos condemned the Republic's moral compromises with brutal honesty, yet showed unexpected gentleness toward those caught in war's machinery. He rejected authority and control while respecting individual warriors' struggle for identity. He was not simply a weapon or a threat. He was a being carrying profound trauma and wisdom forged through unimaginable conflict. Captain Rex approached quietly. General, we're receiving reports of increased separatist activity in the northern sectors. They're probing our defenses. Could be preparing for a major push. Acknowledged, Captain. Return to your post. I'll be there shortly. Obi-Wan waited until Rex departed before addressing Kratos. You've seen what we fight for. Lives caught between factions, soldiers bleeding for causes they didn't choose. What do you make of it? The Spartan rose to his full height, chains clinking softly. I see the machinery of war functioning as it always does. Leaders make grand proclamations about freedom and justice, while those who actually fight and die are given no real choice in the matter. Your clone soldiers deserve better. These civilians deserve better, but deserving and receiving are rarely the same thing. Then help us, Obi-Wan said, surprising himself with the directness. You claim to seek understanding of this galaxy. Fight alongside the Republic, not as a soldier following orders, but as an independent warrior choosing to protect the vulnerable. Judge us by our actions, not your assumptions. Kratos' expression remained unreadable, but his eyes held calculation. You seek to recruit me through appeal to morality rather than authority. Clever. But I have learned that even righteous causes can serve corrupt purposes. I will remain, I will observe. And if your separatists attack, I will defend those who cannot defend themselves. Not because I serve your republic, but because warriors protect the weak. That is the only code I still honor. It wasn't an alliance, it wasn't even agreement. But it was something, a temporary convergence of interests that would have to suffice. Obi-Wan nodded acceptance just as the base's alert sirens began wailing. The command center's voice echoed across the installation. Separatist forces incoming. All personnel to defensive positions. Through the medical bay's entrance, they could see the horizon darkening with approaching droid armies. AAT tanks, spider droids, and endless ranks of battle droids marching in precise formation. The Separatists had chosen this moment for their assault, unaware that among the Republic's defenders stood something that existed outside all their calculations. Kratos' hands closed around the blades of chaos, their flames igniting fully for the first time since his arrival. The chains writhed with anticipation of violence. Your enemies come. Now we see if your Republic is worth the blood its soldiers spill. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, its blue blade humming to life. Then let's show you what the Jedi fight for. As the first artillery shells screamed overhead and the ground trembled with approaching mechanized doom, the ghost of Sparta prepared to bring the fury of dead pantheons to a galaxy that had never witnessed anything like him. The separatist assault came with mechanical inevitability. AAT tanks rolled across crystalline terrain, their primary cannons unleashing blue plasma that shattered Republic defensive barriers. Spider droids scuttled forward on articulated legs, their laser cannons tracking clone positions with emotionless precision. Behind them, battle droids marched in perfect ranks. B-1 units with their skeletal frames, B-2 super battle droids built like walking gun platforms, and the occasional droid Deka rolling forward before deploying its shield generators and twin blasters. Kratos stood on the forward defensive line beside Captain Rex and his squad, watching the mechanical tide approach with the cold assessment of a warrior who had faced armies before. Clone troopers fired from entrenched positions, their blue blaster bolts creating a wall of suppressing fire. 8 TE walkers unleashed mass driver cannons that punched through droid formations, scattering metal limbs like chaff. LAT gunships screamed overhead, their composite beam lasers raking enemy positions. "First time seeing a separatist assault?" Rex asked, his voice professionally calm despite the chaos. "I have seen armies of the dead commanded by Hades, automaton servants of Hephaestus, and legions of creatures from realms beyond mortal comprehension," Kratos replied, chains tightening around his forearms. "Your mechanical soldiers are numerous but predictable. They follow patterns. Patterns can be broken." Rex's helmet turned toward the Spartan, processing that statement. "These droids have advanced tactical programming. They adapt to battlefield conditions. They adapt within acceptable parameters defined by their creators," Kratos interrupted. "True adaptation requires the chaos of living thought. Your clone soldiers possess this. The machines do not." Before Rex could respond, a droideka rolled through the Republic's suppressing fire, its shields absorbing dozens of direct hits. It deployed 20 meters from their position, twin blasters already tracking toward the clone squad. Rex shouted a warning, his men diving for cover as the droideka opened fire with devastating accuracy. Kratos moved. The blades of chaos extended on their chains as the Spartan charged directly at the shielded droid. Blaster bolts hammered his torso and shoulders. He felt the burns, the pain of superheated plasma against divine flesh. But divine flesh had endured worse. He crashed into the droideka's shield like a battering ram. The energy barrier, designed to deflect energy weapons and small projectiles, had no programming for something that simply refused to acknowledge its existence. The Spartan's momentum carried him through the shield's perimeter. His blade carved through the droideka's central processing unit, while the chain of his second blade wrapped around one articulated leg. With a roar that echoed across the battlefield, Kratos yanked, using the destroyed droideka as a flail. He pivoted, hurling the several hundred-kilogram machine directly into an advancing line of B-1 battle droids. Metal bodies crumpled and scattered like children's toys. The clones of Rex's squad stared in stunned silence for precisely 2 seconds before training reasserted itself. "You heard the man," Rex shouted. "Droids follow patterns. Let's break them. Fives, hard case, flank left and hit that spider droid's joints. Echo, coordinates for artillery strike on those tanks. Move!" The clones surged forward with renewed aggression, inspired by witnessing something that treated droidekas like minor inconveniences. Kratos pressed deeper into enemy lines, his blades singing through the air in arcs of fire and fury. A B-2 super battle droid's wrist-mounted blasters tracked him, firing bursts of concentrated plasma. The Spartan twisted, his combat instincts reading the machine's targeting solutions a fraction second before execution. One blade severed the droid's arm cannon. The second blade punched through its reinforced chest plating, ripping out its power core. An AAT tank's main cannon swiveled toward this new priority target. Kratos saw the weapon charging, calculating distance and blast radius with battlefield awareness earned through centuries. He couldn't dodge the shot. Too close, too wide a kill zone. Instead, he grabbed a destroyed B-1 droid's torso and hurled it at the tank's barrel just as the weapon fired. The plasma bolt struck the airborne wreckage, detonating prematurely in a flash of superheated metal. The tank's crew, organic Nemoidians, unlike the droid infantry, had 1 second to register confusion before the ghost of Sparta leaped onto their vehicle. His blades carved through the tank's upper armor like parchment, reaching the control cabin. The Nemoidians screamed briefly, then silence. Kratos wrenched the hatch wider and dropped inside, emerging seconds later as internal explosions began cooking off the tank's ammunition. He leaped clear as the AAT exploded, landing in a crouch that cracked the crystalline ground. Around him, the Separatist advance had stalled. Droid tactical programming struggled to classify this threat. Too powerful for infantry protocols, too mobile for artillery solutions, too unpredictable for standard engagement parameters. The machine's momentary hesitation cost them dearly as Republic forces exploited the confusion. Above the battlefield, in a separatist command frigate, tactical droids observed the engagement through sensor feeds. One T-Series tactical droid's photoreceptors flickered as it processed the anomaly. Unknown combatant demonstrating capabilities beyond database parameters. Threat assessment, extreme. Recommendation, withdraw forces in orbital bombardment. But the droid's organic commander, a Skakoan engineer named Wat Tambor, overrode the suggestion. Negative, capture protocols initiated. That creature represents technology or biology beyond Republic capabilities. Count Dooku will want it alive. The tactical droid's programming accepted the order, despite probability matrices screaming warnings. Deploying specialized capture units. Victory probability, 43%. Organic casualty projections, acceptable. On the ground, Kratos sensed the shift in enemy tactics. The droid advance had fragmented, creating corridors that funneled him toward specific positions. Classic encirclement preparation. He'd broken such formations before. Armies far more intelligent than these machines had tried to cage the ghost of Sparta. They'd all failed. But before he could exploit the opening in the droid lines, reality itself seemed to shudder. A presence descended on the battlefield like a thundercloud. Not physical, but something that pressed against the edge of Kratos' senses. The clone troopers around him staggered, some falling to their knees clutching their heads. Even the droid's movements became sluggish, as if the air itself had thickened. Then he appeared. A figure descended from a separatist transport, landing with preternatural grace on the crystalline battlefield. He wore robes of dark elegance, silver beard framing aristocratic features. In his hand, a curved lightsaber hilt remained unignited, but the threat radiated from him like heat from a forge. This was no soldier or politician. This was a warrior wearing the mask of civilization. Count Dooku, Sith Lord and leader of the Separatist Alliance, had arrived. The droids immediately withdrew to defensive positions, creating a clearing between the Count and the blood-soaked Spartan. Obi-Wan's voice crackled over the comm channel Rex had given Kratos. "Fall back! That's Count Dooku. He's extremely dangerous. We need to regroup." Kratos ignored the warning. He'd faced self-proclaimed lords before. This one dressed better than most, but power always smelled the same regardless of presentation. The blades of chaos ignited fully, flames roaring to life as chains clinked in anticipation. Dooku studied the scarred warrior with the detached interest of a connoisseur examining an unexpected vintage. He extended his senses through the Force, seeking to understand this being who had carved through his droid army with such savage efficiency, and found nothing. No presence in the Force, no ripple in the cosmic fabric, an absence that walked and killed and bled. "Fascinating," Dooku said, his cultured voice carrying easily across the killing ground. "You are the anomaly that fell from the void. My tactical droids suggested orbital bombardment. I'm glad I overruled them. You represent something I have not encountered in all my years studying the Force, a being who exists entirely outside it." "More words from another would-be ruler," Kratos growled. "Your mechanical soldiers died easily. You will too." A slight smile touched Dooku's lips. Such delightful directness. No posturing, no philosophy, just violence as pure expression. "You remind me of someone." The smile faded, replaced by calculating assessment. "I am Count Dooku of Sereno, leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. I offer you purpose in this galaxy, warrior. Join the separatist cause, and I will provide you resources, knowledge, and freedom to operate as you see fit. Continue opposing us, and you will discover that there are forces in this galaxy that transcend mere physical prowess." "I serve no masters," Kratos stated flatly. "Not gods, not counts, not causes. Your offer means nothing." Dooku's expression shifted subtly, disappointment mixed with resignation. "I suspected as much. Beings of power rarely bend easily. Very well. I had hoped to recruit you peacefully. Instead, I will demonstrate why even those outside the Force should respect those who have mastered it." The Count's lightsaber ignited, its crimson blade humming with barely restrained energy. He adopted a fencing stance that somehow managed to appear both relaxed and perfectly balanced. This was Makashi, the dueling form, refined through decades of practice to achieve lethal elegance. Kratos attacked without preamble. His blades carved twin arcs of fire through the air, chains extending to their full length. Dooku's lightsaber moved with impossible speed, deflecting both strikes with minimal motion. The Force guided his movements, showing him trajectories before they had completed, granting him precognition that turned combat into choreographed dance. But Kratos had fought opponents with precognition before. Heimdall, the Norse god who saw all futures, had been killed through sheer unpredictability and rage. The Spartan feinted with his right blade, then redirected mid-strike as Dooku committed to the parry. The Count barely avoided the altered trajectory, his robe smoking where fire passed within inches. "Impressive," Dooku acknowledged, his aristocratic composure cracking slightly. "You adapt to Force precognition. Most beings cannot counter what I've already seen." "I have killed beings who saw my actions before I took them," Kratos replied, pressing the attack. "Foresight means nothing if your body cannot match your vision." They clashed again, crimson lightsaber meeting burning chains and cursed blades. Dooku wove Force techniques between strikes. Telekinetic pushes that Kratos powered through with sheer mass and determination. Lightning that crackled around the Spartan's body but failed to incapacitate. The Count's elegant Makashi form was designed for lightsaber duels, not combating a warrior who used every inch of available space, who attacked from impossible angles using weapons that extended and retracted unpredictably. A blade caught Dooku's shoulder, drawing first blood. The Count hissed in pain and genuine surprise. In decades of combat as a Sith Lord, few beings had marked him so quickly. This creature fought without Force enhancement, without precognitive advantage, yet matched his skill through raw experience and adaptability. Dooku retreated half a step, reassessing. "You are not merely strong, you are skilled. Centuries of combat in your muscle memory, I suspect. What manner of being are you?" "The kind that kills arrogant fools who believe power makes them invincible," Kratos snarled, circling for another opening. The Sith Lord's eyes narrowed dangerously. Pride was his weakness. He knew this, had meditated on it, claimed to have mastered it. Yet this savage's casual dismissal ignited old aristocratic fury. Dooku extended his free hand, channeling the dark side in its purest form. Force lightning erupted from his fingertips, not the measured shock he'd used before, but a torrent of electrical fury. Kratos was engulfed in crackling energy. His divine constitution protected him from instant death, but pain unlike any blaster hit racked his body. His muscles spasmed, chains falling slack. This was different from the plasma weapons. This attacked his very life force, seeking to burn out his existence from within. Through the agony, Kratos' rage awakened. Not the berserker fury of his youth, but the cold, focused wrath of a being who had suffered every torment and emerged unbroken. He forced one foot forward through the lightning storm, then another. His voice emerged as a primal roar that echoed across the battlefield. "I have endured worse." Spartan rage ignited, that remnant of divine power that no dimension could fully suppress. Red energy wreathed Kratos' form, clashing with the violet lightning. For a moment, two fundamental forces of different realities collided. The dark side of the Force meeting the fury of a god-killer. Neither gave ground. Then Kratos' blade, thrown with all his remaining strength, pierced through the lightning. Dooku's concentration broke as he twisted to avoid the burning weapon. The Force lightning ceased abruptly. The Spartan charged through the dissipating energy, closing distance before Dooku could fully recover his elegant fighting stance. They met in close quarters, too close for lightsaber advantage. Kratos' fist hammered into Dooku's ribs, the Force-enhanced durability of the Sith Lord barely preventing his entire ribcage from shattering. The Count managed a lightsaber strike that carved across the Spartan's back, drawing a line of cauterized flesh. Both warriors separated, bloodied, and breathing hard. Dooku's tactical mind overrode pride and pain. This was not a battle he could win without significant risk. The creature was adapting too quickly, and more Republic forces were approaching. The objective had been to evaluate the anomaly, Perhaps capture it. Evaluation was complete. This being could kill him. Capture was no longer viable. You fight well, warrior, Dooku said, his voice strained but still maintaining aristocratic control. But this battle serves neither of us. I withdraw for now, but know this. Count Dooku does not forget those who shed his blood. We will meet again, and next time I will bring power that even your considerable prowess cannot overcome. A separatist transport descended rapidly, providing extraction. Dooku Force jumped into the craft with effortless grace despite his injuries. The ship's shields absorbed incoming Republic fire as it climbed toward the waiting frigate above. Within seconds, the entire separatist force was executing coordinated withdrawal. Their primary objective, understanding the anomaly, achieved. Kratos stood in the center of the clearing, smoke rising from lightning-scorched skin, blood seeping from lightsaber wounds, chest heaving with exertion. Around him, clone troopers emerged from defensive positions, their expressions hidden behind helmets, but their body language radiating awe and disbelief. Captain Rex approached cautiously, as one might approach a wounded predator. Sir, that was Count Dooku. He's killed dozens of Jedi, and you just fought him to a standstill. The Spartan retrieved his blades, chains coiling back around his forearms. He was skilled, but skill without commitment is merely performance. He withdrew because he valued survival over victory. A warrior who fights to live has already lost to one who lives to fight. Obi-Wan arrived on a commandeered bark speeder, Anakin beside him. Both Jedi looked between the retreating separatist forces and the blood-covered warrior with complex expressions. They had witnessed the impossible, a being outside the Force trading blows with one of the galaxy's most dangerous Sith Lords. Are you injured? Obi-Wan asked, noting the lightsaber wound and electrical burns. I have survived worse, Kratos said flatly. Your enemy is formidable but predictable. He relies on his power to overcome challenges rather than adapting to them. That is weakness disguised as strength. Anakin's eyes fixed on the Spartan with new intensity, part respect, part something darker. You really don't feel it, do you? The Force? Dooku was channeling the dark side at full strength, and you just push through it. Your Force is one power among many, Kratos replied. In my experience, those who claim their power is absolute are the first to fall when confronted by what they cannot comprehend. Your Dooku learned that lesson today. Whether he heeds it remains to be seen. As medical teams rushed forward to treat the wounded and assess damage, none of the Republic personnel noticed the small probe droid hidden among the crystal formations. It transmitted a final data burst before self-destructing, holographic recording of the battle, complete sensor logs, and biometric analysis of the unknown warrior. Light years away, aboard a secret facility on Sereno, Count Dooku reviewed the footage with growing fascination and something approaching trepidation. This Kratos represented a variable that could destabilize carefully laid plans. But more concerning was explaining this development to his master. With reluctance, Dooku activated the holoprojector. The image of Darth Sidious materialized, his hooded features shadowed and menacing. My apprentice, I sense you have news that displeases you. Yes, my master, Dooku replied, bowing his head. An anomaly has appeared on Christophsis, a warrior from beyond our galaxy, possessing considerable power, but existing entirely outside the Force. I engaged him personally. The results were inconclusive. Sidious's yellow eyes glinted with predatory interest. Show me. Dooku transmitted the battle footage. The Dark Lord of the Sith watched in silence as Kratos carved through droid armies and traded blows with his apprentice. When the recording ended, Sidious was quiet for a long moment. Fascinating, the Sith Lord finally murmured. A being outside the Force, yet capable of resisting its power through sheer will and physicality. Such an anomaly could threaten the grand plan if left uncontrolled. His attention sharpened on Dooku. But it could also serve us. Continue monitoring this Kratos. Learn his nature, his origins, his weaknesses. If he can be turned to our purposes, he becomes an asset. If not, he will be eliminated, Dooku finished. Precisely. The Force has brought this warrior to our galaxy for a reason, Lord Tyrannus. Discover that reason and ensure it serves the Sith, not our enemies. The transmission ended. Dooku sat in darkness, touching the bandaged wound on his shoulder. Count Dooku had fought Jedi Masters, mercenary legends, and countless warriors across the galaxy. None had marked him so easily. This Kratos was dangerous in ways the Republic didn't yet comprehend. But danger, properly channeled, was simply another tool for those with the vision to wield it. The Republic Medical Bay had become uncomfortably familiar territory over the following days. Backed-up patches covered Kratos' torso where Force lightning had seared flesh, and the lightsaber wound across his back required regular treatment despite his enhanced healing. The clone medics approached him with professional detachment, masking obvious wariness. None had treated injuries quite like his, where damage that should have killed seemed merely inconvenient. Kix, the battalion's chief medical officer, ran a scanner over the healing lightning burns with growing confusion. By all standard medical metrics, you should be dead. Force lightning of that intensity cooks internal organs, disrupts neural pathways. You've got surface burns and some muscle damage, but your vital organs are... He paused, recalibrating the scanner. They're functioning at 98% capacity, 3 days after near-fatal electrical trauma. I am difficult to kill, Kratos stated simply, enduring the examination with stoic patience. Gods have tried. Titans have tried. All failed. Kix exchanged glances with his medical assistant, another clone named Korik. The medics had heard the rumors spreading through the base that this scarred warrior had fought Count Dooku himself and lived, that he moved through droid fire like it was rain, that he existed outside the Force itself, a void in the cosmic fabric. Rumors were easy to dismiss. The evidence healing impossibly fast before them was not. Well, whatever you are, you're clear for light duty, Kix said, logging the examination results. But I'm recommending you avoid any more Sith Lords for at least a week. Your body needs recovery time, enhanced healing or not. Kratos slid off the medical cot, testing his movement. The pain was present but manageable. Background noise his mind had learned to categorize and ignore centuries ago. He'd fought through worse. He'd died through worse. Your recommendation is noted. As he exited the medical bay, Captain Rex fell into step beside him. The clone captain had become something of an unofficial liaison between Kratos and the Republic command structure, primarily because Rex seemed to be the only officer the Spartan didn't immediately dismiss or threaten. Their relationship had developed the mutual respect of warriors who recognize competence regardless of origin. General Kenobi wants to see you in the command center, Rex said. We've received intelligence from Republic Command. The Separatists have been unusually quiet since Dooku's withdrawal. Too quiet. Predators go silent before they strike, Kratos observed, his combat instincts reading the pattern. Your enemy is gathering strength or changing tactics. Possibly both. That's what the generals think too. Rex's voice carried concern that didn't quite break through military professionalism. But there's something else. The Jedi Council on Coruscant has been asking questions about you. Lots of questions. What you are, where you came from, what your intentions are in this galaxy. Kratos' expression darkened. More authority figures seeking to categorize and control what they don't understand? I have no obligation to answer their questions. I know, Rex replied carefully. And between you and me, I respect that. But sir, the Jedi Council isn't just curious. They're concerned. A powerful being outside the Force represents something they've never encountered. They're trained to sense threats through the Force, but you're invisible to it. That makes some of them nervous. Their nervousness is not my concern. Maybe not, but their actions could be. Rex stopped walking, turning to face the Spartan directly. If they decide you're a threat to galactic stability, they'll try to contain you. And that means sending Jedi, multiple Jedi, to do it. I've seen what you can do, but even you can't fight the entire order. The ghost of Sparta met Rex's gaze, reading genuine concern beneath the tactical warning. The clone captain wasn't threatening him. He was trying to prevent a conflict that would cost lives on both sides. It was a gesture Kratos recognized and appreciated, even if he didn't fully trust the system Rex served. I have fought pantheons of gods, Captain. If your Jedi choose confrontation, they will learn the same lesson Olympus learned. That power, no matter how ancient or revered, bleeds and dies like everything else. He resumed walking toward the command center. But I am not seeking such conflict. I remain because I choose to understand this galaxy, not conquer it. If your council can accept that, we have no quarrel. Rex followed, hoping that understanding would be enough, but knowing the Jedi Council's tendency toward preemptive action when faced with unknown variables. The Clone Wars had made everyone paranoid, even the Peacekeepers. They entered the command center to find unusual activity. Obi-Wan stood at the holotable alongside Anakin, but they'd been joined by two new figures, transmitted via hologram. One was a diminutive, green-skinned being with large eyes and pointed ears, leaning heavily on a Geimer stick. The other was a dark-skinned human with an expression of serene authority. Even through holographic projection, their presence commanded respect. Kratos, Obi-Wan greeted formally, allow me to introduce Master Yoda, Grand Master of the Jedi Order, and Master Mace Windu, senior member of the Jedi Council. Yoda's ancient eyes fixed on the Spartan with penetrating intensity. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. A disturbance in the Force you are, or rather, an absence where something should be. Troubling this is, much to discuss we have. Kratos crossed his arms, his posture radiating defiance toward the scrutiny. I owe you no explanation, small one. I exist as I am, regardless of your Force's approval. Anakin's hand moved toward his lightsaber at the perceived disrespect toward the Grand Master, but Yoda raised a calming hand. Peace, young Skywalker. Offense, I sense none. Directness, refreshing it is, after much political maneuvering. The ancient Jedi's expression remained neutral, revealing nothing. But understand, you must, unprecedented, your existence is. Outside the Force entirely, yet possessing great power. Concerned the Council is about what this means. Your concern changes nothing about what I am, Kratos replied. I did not choose to arrive in your galaxy. I seek no conquest, no allegiance, no throne. I remain to understand this place, then I will decide my path. If your council seeks to imprison or control me for the crime of existing outside your understanding, they are welcome to try. Mace Windu's expression hardened. That sounds like a threat. It is a statement of fact. Kratos' voice remained level, devoid of bluster or aggression, simply absolute certainty. I have been caged before by beings far more powerful than your order. I broke those chains. I killed those captors. I will do the same to anyone who attempts to bind me again. The tension in the command center became palpable. Clone officers shifted uncomfortably, caught between Jedi authority and this warrior who had fought beside them against impossible odds. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, seeking diplomatic ground before the situation escalated beyond repair. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly, the Jedi Master suggested. Kratos, the Council isn't seeking to imprison you. We simply need to understand your nature and intentions. You fought alongside Republic forces, protected civilians, and engaged Count Dooku in direct combat. Those actions suggest alignment with our values, even if you reject formal allegiance. I protected those who could not protect themselves, Kratos corrected. That is not alignment with your Republic. That is personal code. Do not confuse my actions with support for your political structures. Yoda hummed thoughtfully, his ears twitching. A warrior's code you follow. Honor in combat, protection of the weak. Similar to Jedi philosophy, this is, yet reject the Force, you do. Why? For the first time, something shifted in Kratos' expression, not softening, but a flicker of old pain surfacing. Because every cosmic power I've encountered claimed to serve a greater good while manipulating those who served it. The gods of Olympus promise glory and purpose, while orchestrating suffering for their entertainment. Your Force may be different, or it may be another cage wearing a more seductive face. I will not surrender my will to any power, benevolent or otherwise. The Force doesn't demand surrender, Anakin interjected, his frustration evident. It's not some tyrant god, it's the energy of all life, binding and connecting. Then it should have no issue with me remaining separate from it, Kratos interrupted. If your Force truly connects all things, one exception should pose no threat. Unless what concerns you is not my existence outside the Force, but my refusal to be controlled by those who wield it. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy, Mace Windu's expression remained stern, but Obi-Wan saw the slight tightening around his eyes that indicated the council member was re-evaluating his approach. Yoda simply continued studying the Spartan with those ancient, inscrutable eyes. "Wise you are in the ways of power and manipulation," Yoda said eventually. "Suffered much you have. Trust, not given easily. Understand this, I do." He leaned more heavily on his stick, appearing frail but losing none of his authority. "But understand you must, in the middle of galactic war, we are, the Sith, ancient enemies of the Jedi, manipulate this conflict. Count Dooku, whom you fought, a Sith Lord he is, his master, even more dangerous. These beings seek dominion through the dark side of the Force, through passion, hatred, and the subjugation of all who oppose them. Then they are no different from the gods I killed," Kratos stated flatly. "Perhaps," Yoda acknowledged, "but unlike your gods, the Sith hide in shadows, manipulate from within. This war, orchestrated it may be, the Republic corrupted from inside, the Jedi, stretched thin, unable to see the true enemy." His gaze intensified. "Outside the Force you are, invisible to Sith manipulation. Asset this makes you, or threat, which you must choose." It was the most direct anyone in the Republic had been with Kratos, acknowledging both his potential value and the implicit threat he posed. The Spartan respected the honesty, even as he rejected the premise of choosing sides in a conflict he barely understood. "I choose neither," Kratos said. "I am not your weapon against the Sith. I am not your enemy unless you force the issue. I am a warrior walking his own path, and that path currently intersects with your war because I have nowhere else to be. If fighting your separatists serves my need to understand this galaxy, I will fight. But I do not serve your council, your republic, or your force." Mace Windu's frustration was evident. You can't remain neutral in a galactic war. Every action has consequences, serves one side or another, whether you intend it or not. "I have been used by causes greater than myself before," Kratos replied, his voice carrying the weight of bitter experience. "I will not make that mistake again. My actions are my own. The consequences are mine to bear. Your interpretations of those consequences are irrelevant to me." Before Windu could respond, Yoda raised his hand again. "Enough. Force the issue, we cannot. Trust earned, not demanded, it must be." He addressed Kratos directly. "Walk your path, warrior. But know this, Dooku will return. His master, Count Dooku's master, will take interest in you. The Sith seek to use or destroy all that they cannot control. Ready for this? You must be." "I have faced beings who claimed mastery over life and death," Kratos said. "Your Sith lords will find me less accommodating than they expect." The holographic transmission ended, Yoda and Mace Windu's images flickering out of existence. The command center remained tense, clone officers uncertain how to process what they'd witnessed. A warrior casually dismissing the Jedi Council's authority and walking away with no apparent consequences. Obi-Wan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Well, that could have gone worse, though I'm not sure how." "He's impossible," Anakin muttered. "The Council offers him understanding, protection, purpose, and he throws it back in their faces. What does he want?" "To be left alone," Rex said quietly. Every head turned toward the clone captain, surprised by his interjection into Jedi conversation. Rex stood his ground. "Sirs, with respect, Kratos isn't playing hard to get or testing our commitment. He genuinely wants no part of our war beyond understanding where he is and surviving until he can figure out what's next." Everything he said has been consistent with that. Obi-Wan studied his captain thoughtfully. "You've spoken with him more than most, Rex. What's your assessment?" The clone captain chose his words carefully. "He's the most dangerous individual I've ever encountered, including Jedi and Sith. But he follows a code: protection of the weak, respect for warriors, absolute rejection of authority he hasn't personally validated. If we treat him as an asset to be controlled or a threat to be contained, we'll create the enemy we're trying to avoid. If we accept him as an independent operator who happens to be in our vicinity," Rex shrugged, "maybe we get a powerful ally who fights when his code aligns with our missions." Treating a potential threat as an independent operator is a significant risk, Obi-Wan said, though his tone suggested he was considering it. So is making an enemy of someone who fought Count Dooku to a standstill, Rex countered. Sir, the clones talk. They saw what happened on the battlefield. Kratos fought like one of us, protecting the man next to him, holding the line, taking hits meant for brothers. That counts for something. Anakin's expression remained skeptical. He also told the Jedi Council he'd kill anyone who tried to cage him. That's not exactly good ally material. No, Obi-Wan agreed slowly, but it is honest. And honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is preferable to deception in times like these. He made a decision, one he suspected the Council wouldn't entirely approve of. We continue as we have been. Kratos fights when and where he chooses. We provide information and resources if he requests them. We don't attempt to control or contain him, and we hope that his code and our objectives continue to align. And if they don't, Anakin pressed, then we deal with that situation when it arises. But until then, I'd rather have a dangerous warrior who respects boundaries fighting near us than against us. Outside the command center, Kratos stood on the base's perimeter, looking up at the alien stars of this galaxy. Somewhere among those points of light was a way home, or at least a way forward. His arrival here had been involuntary, a consequence of destroying an artifact that threatened his realm. Whether return was even possible remained unknown, but he'd survived impossible situations before. He'd climbed from the depths of Hades. He'd defeated fate itself. This galaxy, with its force-wielding warriors and mechanical armies and political machinations, was simply another challenge to overcome through strength, cunning, and refusal to yield. The Force didn't touch him, the Jedi couldn't predict him, the Sith couldn't corrupt him. In a galaxy bound by invisible cosmic threads, Kratos remained the blade that cut through such bindings. And that, more than any weapon or power, made him truly dangerous. 2 weeks after his confrontation with the Jedi Council, Kratos found himself standing in the maintenance bay, watching clone troopers repair their armor and weapons. The base had settled into an uneasy routine: separatist probing attacks, Republic countermaneuvers, and the slow grind of a war with no clear end. The clones had gradually grown accustomed to his presence, though none approached casually. Respect and wariness in equal measure. Captain Rex worked on his DC-17 pistols at a nearby bench, methodically disassembling and cleaning each component with the precision of someone whose life depended on equipment reliability. Fives and Echo argued good-naturedly about optimum firing positions for different droid configurations. Hardcase cleaned his Z6 rotary cannon while humming some marching cadence. These were the sounds of warriors between battles, familiar across every realm Kratos had known. You ever think about what happens after? The question came from Fives, directed at no one in particular, but loud enough for the entire bay to hear. After the war, I mean. What do clones do when there's no more fighting? The question hung in the air with uncomfortable weight. Echo looked up from his rifle. We serve the Republic. There'll always be something to protect, some threat to face. But what if there isn't? Fives pressed. What if the war ends, peace breaks out, and suddenly millions of soldiers bred for combat have nothing to do? The Republic won't need a standing army that size. Then what? Hardcase stopped humming. Then we fight somewhere else. Outer Rim needs security. Pirates need hunting. Warriors find wars. It's what we do. Is it what we do, or what we were made to do? Fives' voice carried frustration that had been building for some time. Ever since Kratos asked if we could refuse orders, I've been thinking. Are we actually choosing to serve, or just following programming so deep we don't recognize it as programming? Rex set down his pistol carefully, his voice carrying command authority. We're soldiers, Fives, the best soldiers in the galaxy. We chose our names. We forge bonds with our brothers. We make tactical decisions in combat. That's not programming, that's being human. Human, Fives tested the word. But we're not, are we? We're genetically identical copies, grown in tubes, accelerated to maturity, trained from childhood to obey orders and die for the Republic. How is that different from battle droids getting their programming? Because we think, Echo snapped, defending his brother and himself. Because we care about each other, about civilians, about doing the right thing. Droids are just machines following code. Are we sure about that? Kratos' voice cut through the argument like a blade. The Spartan had been listening silently, but Fives' questions echoed thoughts that had been circling his own mind since arriving in this galaxy. Your droids follow orders without question. You follow orders without question. Your droids were manufactured for war. You were manufactured for war. The primary difference is that you can question, but do you? Rex stood, his posture defensive. Sir, with respect, you don't understand what it means to be a clone trooper. We're not victims of our creation. We take pride in our service. Pride in chains is still bondage, Kratos replied, not unkindly. I am not mocking your courage or skill, Captain. I am questioning whether the choice to serve was ever truly yours to make, or whether you've been conditioned from birth to believe servitude is honor. The maintenance bay had gone completely silent now. Every clone present listening to words that struck at the core of their identity. Hardcase's hand drifted toward his sidearm, not threateningly, but instinctively protecting against an existential attack more dangerous than blaster fire. Fives, however, leaned forward. That's what I'm asking. How do we know the difference between choosing to serve and being programmed to think we're choosing? You start by asking the question, Kratos said, his harsh voice carrying unexpected gentleness. Slaves who question their bondage are already halfway to freedom. Slaves who believe they chose their chains remain bound forever. We're not slaves, Rex insisted, but doubt had crept into his voice, a hairline fracture and absolute certainty. Then prove it, Kratos challenged. Make one choice that your programming wouldn't make. Question one order that feels wrong. Walk away from one battle that serves your master's interests instead of justice. He met Rex's gaze steadily. If you can do these things without breaking, you are soldiers. If you cannot, you are weapons that think they are men. The accusation hung like smoke after artillery fire. Part of Kratos expected violence. Warriors defending their identity often struck out when that identity was threatened. He'd done the same when confronted by those who claimed his service to Ares had been anything other than noble. Instead, Rex sat down slowly, his helmet in his hands. The Jedi, General Kenobi, General Skywalker, they treat us like people, like brothers in arms. That's real, isn't it? That's not just them manipulating weapons? Perhaps, Kratos allowed. Or perhaps they are good officers who care for their soldiers while remaining blind to the fundamental injustice of those soldiers' existence. A kind master is still a master. Fives spoke quietly. During the battle for Camino, Shakti said we were bred for combat, but the Force gave us the same right to life as any being. But rights without the ability to exercise them are just words, aren't they? The Spartan recognized the philosophical awakening happening before him. The dangerous moment when warriors realized the causes they'd bled for might not be the righteous crusades they'd believed. He'd experienced it watching Sparta's politicians send soldiers to die for territory and pride, disguised as honor. He'd experienced it discovering Ares had manipulated him into killing his own family. Rights are claimed, not granted, Kratos said. Any freedom given can be taken away. Only freedom seized and defended becomes real. Your Jedi say kind words, but do they fight to change the system that created you? Does your Republic debate whether cloning sentient soldiers is ethical, or do they simply accept the convenient army that appeared when they needed one? Echo shook his head, struggling with concepts that threatened everything he'd been raised to believe. This is dangerous talk. This is the kind of thinking that leads to desertion, insubordination, or freedom, Fives interjected. Maybe that's why it scares us. Because if Kratos is right, then everything we've been told about honor and duty is a lie designed to keep us compliant. Not a lie, Kratos corrected. Honor and duty are real, but they must be chosen, not imposed. A warrior who fights for honor claims it for himself. A warrior who fights because he was created to fight serves someone else's honor, not his own. Before the conversation could continue, alarms blared across the base. The intercom crackled with urgency. All personnel to battle stations. Separatist forces detected on approach. This is not a drill. The clones moved immediately, training overriding existential crisis. Weapons were grabbed, armor was checked, positions were taken with the fluid efficiency of soldiers who'd done this 1,000 times. But Kratos saw something different now. Saw the way their bodies moved before conscious thought, how orders were followed before questions could be asked. Conditioning so deep it lived in muscle memory and neural pathways. Rex paused at the bay entrance, turning back to Kratos. We'll continue this conversation later. Right now, my brothers need me. Your brothers, Kratos noted. Not your republic, not your generals. Your brothers. Remember that distinction, Captain. It may save your life someday. Rex's helmet prevented reading his expression, but his body language carried conflict, a soldier torn between duty and dawning awareness. Then he was gone, rushing to join his men as the base mobilized for combat. Kratos followed at his own pace, chains clinking softly. Through the maintenance bay's windows, he could see the approaching separatist force, larger than previous probing attacks. Spider droids, AAT tanks, and something new. Massive MTT troop transports deploying what looked like upgraded battle droids. The enemy had been quiet for weeks, and now he understood why. They'd been preparing. In the command center, Obi-Wan and Anakin coordinated defensive positions with holographic tactical displays. Clone commanders reported in rapid succession, establishing firing solutions and deploying heavy weapons. The Jedi generals moved with practiced efficiency, but Kratos noted the strain in their voices. This wasn't a normal engagement. Something was different. They're committing significant forces, Obi-Wan observed, stroking his beard. More than Christophus warrants strategically. They're after something specific. Or someone, Anakin said, glancing at Kratos as the Spartan entered the command center. This could be about you. Dooku wants a rematch, or worse, he's bringing enough firepower to eliminate you permanently. Let him try, Kratos replied without concern. I have faced armies before. These machines are numerous but predictable. These aren't just machines, Obi-Wan said grimly, highlighting a section of the tactical display. Intelligence indicates Dooku has hired mercenaries, organic commandos specializing in targets conventional forces can't handle, Trandoshan hunters, Mandalorian super commandos, even rumors of dark side assassins. If they're here, you're the target. Kratos felt a familiar sensation, the gathering of predators around prey they believed wounded or isolated. It was the same mistake every enemy made, from Greek armies to Norse gods. They saw a single warrior and believed numbers would suffice. They always learned otherwise. Where do you need me? Kratos asked, the question directed at Obi-Wan, but carrying no implication of subordination. This was one warrior asking another where the battle would be hottest. Obi-Wan appreciated the distinction. The eastern perimeter is taking the heaviest assault. Rex's battalion is holding, but if those MTTs deploy their full payload, the line will collapse. After that, they'll have direct access to the civilian refugee center. Then that is where I fight, Kratos stated simply. Not because he served the Republic, but because warriors protected those who couldn't protect themselves. It was the only code he still honored, the only principle that survived his war against the gods. As he turned to leave, Obi-Wan called after him. Kratos, the conversation you had with Rex and his men. Word is spreading through the clone ranks. Questions about their purpose, their autonomy. The Council won't appreciate philosophical discussions that undermine military cohesion. The Spartan looked back, his scarred face impassive. I did not ask the Council's approval. The clones asked questions that deserved honest answers. If truth undermines your military cohesion, perhaps your military is built on foundations that should be questioned. Perhaps, Obi-Wan admitted with surprising candor. But during a battle isn't the time for such questions. Soldiers need certainty to fight effectively. Slaves need certainty to remain compliant, Kratos corrected. Warriors fight better when they know why they fight, not just that they must. Your clone troopers are discovering the difference. Whether that strengthens or weakens them depends on how you respond to their awakening. He left before Obi-Wan could reply, striding toward the eastern perimeter where the sounds of battle already echoed. Behind him, the Jedi Master stood in troubled silence, considering uncomfortable truths about an army of manufactured soldiers fighting a war orchestrated by hidden hands. Anakin noticed his former master's expression. You're not actually considering his words, are you? The clones are loyal, dedicated. They die for the Republic without hesitation. Yes, Obi-Wan said quietly. That's precisely what troubles me. What kind of society creates sentient beings specifically designed to die for causes they had no say in choosing? The question hung unanswered as explosions rocked the base perimeter. Outside, Kratos reached the defensive line where Rex's battalion held against the mechanized onslaught. The captain saw him coming and nodded acknowledgement. Not orders, not commands, simply one warrior recognizing another arriving to hold the line. Glad you're here, sir, Rex said, his earlier philosophical turmoil buried beneath battlefield necessity. We've got significant enemy forces inbound, including what looks like heavy assault units. Could get messy. It always does, Kratos replied, the blades of chaos igniting with anticipation. But messy is where warriors prove themselves. Let's show your enemy what happens when they bring programmed machines against thinking soldiers. Rex's voice carried a hint of something new. Not just obedience, but pride of a different kind. You heard him, men. We're not droids following programs. We're soldiers who choose to hold this line. For our brothers, for those who can't defend themselves. Clone Force 99 might get all the glory, but we're the ones who hold when everyone else runs. Now let's teach these clankers why. The clones roared approval, their voices carrying conviction that went beyond training or conditioning. And in that moment, Kratos saw the beginning of something dangerous to any empire built on manufactured obedience. Soldiers who were starting to understand the difference between orders and choices, between dying because you were made to and dying because you decided the cause was worth it. The separatist forces crashed against their line like a metal tide, and Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, waded into the carnage alongside brothers in arms who were just beginning to realize they were more than weapons, wearing human faces. The assault on the eastern perimeter was methodical brutality. AAT tanks positioned themselves on elevated crystal formations, their cannons raining plasma fire that turned defensive barriers into molten slag. Spider droids advanced with mechanical precision, their laser cannons tracking clone positions with targeting algorithms that adjusted for wind, elevation, and even the crystalline terrain's refractive properties. Behind them, the MTT transports deployed their payload, not standard B-1 battle droids, but BX series commando droids, sleeker and far more dangerous. Rex's voice cut through the chaos with battlefield calm. Concentrate fire on those spider droids. Echo, Jesse, get those rocket launchers active. Fives, hard case, suppressing fire on those commandos. They adapt to our tactics, so keep switching, firing positions. The clones fought with discipline earned through countless engagements, but the separatist forces had learned from previous encounters. Commando droids moved with unsettling speed, vibro swords crackling with energy as they closed distance with clone positions. One leaped over a defensive barrier, its blade arching toward a clone's exposed neck. The trooper's life flashed before his brother's eyes in the split second before intervention was impossible. Then Kratos' chain wrapped around the droid's midsection, yanking it backwards with devastating force. The Spartan's blade carved through the machine's torso before it could recover, bisecting the advanced combat unit. He'd been moving through the battlefield like a force of nature, his divine constitution absorbing blaster fire that would have killed normal beings while his weapons carved through the mechanical ranks. Appreciate the save. Sir? The clone, a trooper named Kix, shouted over the din. Kratos didn't respond, already engaging 3 more commando droids that had flanked the position. These machines were faster than their B-1 predecessors, their programming allowing for tactical improvisation that made them genuinely dangerous. They attacked in coordinated patterns, vibro swords seeking joints and weak points with lethal efficiency. The Spartan met their coordination with centuries of combat experience. He recognized their attack pattern within seconds, a modified version of ancient Spartan phalanx tactics, ironically enough. They struck in sequence, never exposing themselves to counterattack while maintaining offensive pressure. Against most opponents, it would be devastatingly effective. Kratos was not most opponents. His first blade caught the lead droid's vibro sword mid-swing, the cursed fires of Olympus meeting Star Wars technology in a shower of sparks. His second blade swept low, severing the machine's legs. As it fell, he used its descending body as a springboard. launching himself at the remaining two droids with controlled fury. They attempted to adjust their formation, processors calculating optimal response patterns. They calculated too slowly. Kratos landed between them, chains extending in opposite directions. Both blades found targets simultaneously, one through a droid's photoreceptor array, the other through critical processing nodes. The machines collapsed, their advanced programming reduced to sparking wreckage. These machines learn quickly, Kratos observed, landing beside Rex's position. But learning requires time. Adaptation requires survival. Deny them both. Rex nodded, translating the combat philosophy into tactical orders. You heard him. Don't give them time to analyze. Aggressive assault patterns, keep them reacting instead of adapting. The clones surged forward with renewed aggression, their training combining with the Spartans' brutal wisdom. Blaster fire intensified, focusing on crippling shots rather than center mass. Legs, weapon arms, sensor arrays. The commando droid's superior programming meant nothing when they were disabled before they could utilize it. But the Separatists had prepared for Kratos specifically. From the rear lines, three figures emerged that made even the battle-hardened clones hesitate. Trandoshan hunters, their reptilian forms wrapped in heavy armor, carrying weapons that weren't standard issue. Behind them, something worse. Two figures in dark robes, their faces hidden beneath hoods, moving with the predatory grace of Force users. Dark Jedi, or more accurately, dark side assassins, fallen Jedi or Force sensitives recruited by Dooku for tasks too brutal for conventional forces. The Trandoshans opened fire first, their weapons unleashing not blaster bolts, but concentrated sonic blasts designed to incapacitate without killing, capture weapons. One caught a clone trooper who'd broken cover, and the soldier's scream was cut short as he collapsed, his neural system overloaded. Fall back, Rex ordered, recognizing weapons his armor provided minimal protection against. Establish secondary defensive positions. Get the wounded behind cover. Kratos didn't retreat. He'd identified the primary threats, the Force users who moved through the battlefield with unnatural speed and purpose. They were here for him specifically, just as Obi-Wan had predicted. Let them come. He'd killed Force wielders before. The first assassin attacked with twin crimson lightsabers, their fighting style aggressive and unpredictable. Jarkai technique corrupted by dark-side fury. Strikes came from impossible angles, the Force guiding the assassin's movements to exploit openings before they fully appeared. Against a normal opponent, even a skilled warrior, it would have been overwhelming. Kratos had fought Hermes, the god of speed, whose movements defied mortal perception. He'd battled Zeus, whose precognition came from omniscience itself. These Force users were fast, but they weren't faster than gods. The Spartan's blade intercepted the first lightsaber strike, cursed fires meeting plasma in a violent energy discharge. His second blade swept toward the assassin's exposed flank, but the Darksider twisted mid-strike, using the Force to augment impossible acrobatics. They separated, circling each other with predatory assessment. You are the anomaly, the assassin hissed, their voice distorted by vocoder and corruption. Count Dooku sends his regards. You should have accepted his offer. Now you're simply another obstacle to be removed. More words from servants of would-be tyrants, Kratos replied, chains coiling in anticipation. Your master fled our last encounter. You will do the same, or you will die. Choose quickly. The assassin lunged again, but this time they weren't alone. The second Darksider attacked from Kratos' blind side, their single crimson blade seeking his spine with surgical precision. The coordinated assault was designed to overwhelm through synchronized strikes from multiple angles. Classic Sith tactics. Kratos spun, his chain extending to deflect the blindside attack, while his free blade parried the frontal assault. The impact sent Force shockwaves rippling across the battlefield, actually disrupting the nearby combat as both clone and droid forces felt the pressure of corrupted Force energy meeting the rage of a god-killer. But coordinated attacks meant coordinated positions. The assassins had closed distance simultaneously. Focusing on the kill, they traded defensive positioning for offensive pressure. It was the opening Kratos needed. He roared, Spartan rage igniting as red energy wreathed his form. The divine fury that had destroyed pantheons erupted in a reality designed around different metaphysical laws. The Force itself seemed to recoil from the alien power, creating a momentary pocket of pure chaos where precognition failed and dark side enhancement flickered uncertainly. In that pocket of disruption, Kratos was simply faster, stronger, and infinitely more experienced. His blade carved through the first assassin's lightsaber guard, the chain wrapping around their weapon arm. He yanked with devastating force, dislocating the shoulder and causing the lightsaber to fall from nerveless fingers. His second blade found the assassin's throat before their scream could form. The second assassin tried to retreat, their training screaming warnings that this enemy operated outside normal combat parameters. But retreat meant turning their back, meant assuming Kratos wouldn't or couldn't close the distance. The Spartan's chain extended impossibly far, the cursed weapon responding to his fury by defying even this galaxy's physics. It wrapped around the fleeing assassin's leg, and then Kratos was pulling them back like reeling in prey. The assassin's lightsaber slashed at the chain desperately, but the blades of chaos were forged in hells the Force didn't acknowledge. The plasma blade passed through without severing the ethereal metal. The assassin had time for one final burst of Force lightning, electricity crackling toward Kratos with killing intensity. The Spartan had been struck by Zeus's lightning, had endured Poseidon's wrath, had burned in Hades' flames. This assassin's power was considerable, but it wasn't godly. Kratos walked through the lightning storm, his divine constitution absorbing damage that charred skin and burned muscle, but never stopped his advance. His hand closed around the assassin's throat, lifting them off the ground as the Spartan rage faded. Your master sends servants while he hides in shadows. Tell Count Dooku that the next time we meet, no interruption will save him. No retreat will be allowed. We will finish what we started, and he will learn what happens when Sith Lords challenge those who have killed beings far greater than them. He threw the assassin toward the Separatist lines, the body clearing 50 meters before crashing through a group of B-1 battle droids. The message was clear. Take your broken weapon back to your master. The Trandoshan hunters, witnessing their Force user support eliminated with brutal efficiency, reassessed their contract. Credits meant nothing if you didn't survive to spend them. They retreated in tactical formation, their sonic weapons providing covering fire as they withdrew to their transport. The Separatist forces, having lost their elite units, began coordinated retreat. The commando droids withdrew first, their valuable programming too expensive to waste on a battle that had turned decisively. The spider droids and AAT tanks provided covering fire, their mechanical minds accepting defeat with the same emotionless calculation they'd approach victory. Rex's voice echoed across the defensive line. Maintain positions, don't pursue. Secure the perimeter and get casualty reports. Kratos stood among the wreckage of destroyed droids and dead assassins, his body covered in burns from Force lightning and blaster impacts. Blood seeped from multiple wounds, none fatal, all painful. Behind him, clone troopers emerged from defensive positions, their expressions hidden behind helmets, but their body language radiating a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Fives approached cautiously. Sir, those were dark side Force users. We've seen Jedi fight, seen what the Force can do. He struggled for words. You just killed them like they were nothing. How? They were powerful by your galaxy standards, Kratos acknowledged, testing his burned arms and finding them still functional. But power is relative. They relied on the Force to guide their movements, to enhance their abilities. When my rage disrupted that connection, they were simply skilled warriors with energy blades. And I have killed far more skilled warriors with far more dangerous weapons. Captain Rex joined them, surveying the battlefield with tactical assessment. We held the line, but barely. If you hadn't been here, he let the implication hang. Without Kratos, the elite units would have broken through, and the entire defensive position would have collapsed. I was here, Kratos said simply. Your men fought well. They adapted, held discipline under pressure, protected each other. That is what warriors do. Warriors, Fives repeated softly, and Rex glanced at his brother. The question from earlier, whether they were warriors or weapons, hadn't been forgotten despite the battle's urgency. Obi-Wan and Anakin arrived via Bark's speeder, both Jedi immediately assessing the carnage. Anakin's eyes fixed on the dead dark side assassins, then on Kratos, his expression complex. You killed Force users, both of them. Without the Force, without lightsabers, with weapons forged in my realm and skill earned through ages of war, Kratos corrected, your Force grants advantages, but it is not invincibility. Everything that lives can be killed. Everything that wields power can be overcome. Your Jedi should remember this before they assume their abilities make them untouchable. Obi-Wan knelt beside one of the fallen assassins, examining the lightsaber burns and the brutal efficiency of the killing wounds. These were trained Darksiders, probably former Jedi who fell to Dooku's manipulation. They would have been formidable opponents even for Jedi Masters. He stood, meeting Kratos' gaze. You're not just powerful, you're methodically lethal against Force users specifically. That makes you either the Republic's greatest asset or most dangerous potential enemy. I am neither, Kratos replied with familiar refrain. I am a warrior who will not kneel to your Republic or your separatists. Today their attack threatened those I chose to defend, so I eliminated the threat. Tomorrow, if your Republic threatens what I protect, I will eliminate that threat with equal efficiency. Do not mistake circumstantial alignment for loyalty. Anakin's hand moved toward his lightsaber, the gesture unconscious but telling. You talk about eliminating Republic threats. That sounds like honesty, Obi-Wan interrupted, placing a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. Anakin, he's warning us not to assume we can control or command him. That's not a threat. It's a boundary. We'd be wise to respect it. Across the battlefield, clone medics moved among wounded brothers, providing aid and comfort. Kratos watched them work, noting the way they prioritized each other over Republic equipment, how they used personal names rather than designation numbers, how they formed bonds that transcended their manufactured origins. Rex followed his gaze. You're thinking about our earlier conversation, about whether we're warriors or weapons. You fought today as warriors, Kratos observed. You made tactical decisions, adapted to battlefield conditions, chose to protect your brothers and civilians rather than simply following orders. That is agency, limited perhaps, but present. Limited by design, Fives added bitterly, joining the conversation. We can choose tactics, but not whether to fight. We can choose positions, but not whether to serve. We're weapons with just enough autonomy to be effective, but not enough to be free. Obi-Wan overheard the exchange, his expression troubled. Fives, this kind of talk is the truth, General, Rex interrupted, surprising both himself and his Jedi commander with the contradiction. With respect, sir, Kratos asked questions we'd never been allowed to ask. Now we can't stop asking them. Were we created to serve the Republic, or did the Republic accept an army of sentient beings, created by unknown parties for unknown purposes? And if the latter, what happens when those purposes reveal themselves? The question hung in the air with terrible weight, because the truth that only Palpatine and a handful of others knew, was that the clone army had been created as part of a Sith plot spanning decades. The chips in every clone's brain contained Order 66, programming that would turn these loyal soldiers into Jedi killers when activated. The clones asking questions about their autonomy were getting dangerously close to truths that would unravel everything. And watching from orbit, aboard a Separatist command ship, Count Dooku observed the battle's aftermath through long-range sensors. His assassins were dead. His mercenaries had fled. The Republic's mysterious warrior had once again proven unkillable through conventional means. It was time for unconventional measures. Dooku opened a secure channel to his most dangerous asset, one he'd been reluctant to deploy but could no longer avoid. General Grievous, I have a new priority target for you. A warrior who exists outside the Force and has killed multiple dark-side operatives. I'm transmitting his last known location. Bring me his head or bring me his allegiance. I care not which. The holographic image of the cyborg general flickered to life, his mechanical voice carrying cold anticipation. Another Jedi to add to my collection? No, Dooku replied. Something far more interesting. Something that has killed beings who claim divinity. Show him why you are the Jedi killer, General. Show him what happens when organic weakness meets mechanical perfection. Grievous's skeletal mass somehow conveyed predatory satisfaction. It will be done, Count. This warrior will learn that nothing survives my interest for long. The transmission ended, and Kratos, standing among the wounded and the weary on Christophsis, felt a familiar sensation. The gathering of storms, the approach of something that believed itself apex predator. Let it come. He'd faced worse. He always had. 3 days after Grievous's incursion, the Republic Forward Operating Base received unexpected orders. Evacuation and redeployment. The strategic situation on Christophilus had stabilized enough that Republic Command was redirecting forces to more critical battlefronts. For the clone troopers who'd fought and bled on the Crystal Planet, it was both relief and abandonment. Relief to leave a world of constant combat, abandonment of positions they'd paid for in brothers' lives. Kratos watched the massive Acclamator-class assault ships descend through Christophilus's atmosphere, their bulk creating shadows across the base as loading ramps extended. Clone troopers moved with practiced efficiency, breaking down equipment, organizing supplies, preparing for transit. The machinery of war relocated itself with the same impersonal precision it conducted combat. "We're being assigned to a new operation," Obi-Wan explained, approaching the Spartan while reviewing a datapad. "The planet Umbra in the Ghost Nebula. Republic intelligence indicates separatist forces are using it as a staging ground for attacks on nearby systems. The mission is to take the capital and shut down their supply lines." "Another world, another battle," Kratos observed without inflection. "Your war consumes planets like a fire consumes wood. Each battlefield forgotten as soon as the next one ignites." "War is rarely kind to memory," Obi-Wan agreed with unexpected melancholy. "We fight, we move forward, we try not to dwell on what was lost. It's not ideal, but it's how soldiers survive prolonged conflict." He hesitated before continuing. "You're not obligated to accompany us. You've made it clear you don't serve the Republic. Christophilus is secure enough that you could remain here or travel elsewhere in the galaxy. Find answers about how to return to your realm, or simply exist without the burden of our war." Kratos considered this. The Jedi Master was offering freedom, acknowledgement that the Spartan owed the Republic nothing and could walk away without consequence. It was a gesture of respect, recognizing his autonomy in ways the Council initially refused. But walking away meant abandoning the only purpose he'd found in this alien galaxy, protecting those caught in a war they didn't choose. "I will come," Kratos said simply, "not because I serve your Republic, but because warriors I respect will be fighting. Captain Rex and his brothers have earned my attention. Where they go, I will observe." "Observe?" Obi-Wan repeated with slight smile. "Is that what you call carving through separatist forces and fighting Count Dooku to a standstill? Mere observation?" "I observe by participating. How else does one understand the truth of a situation?" The Jedi Master's expression shifted to something more serious. "Umbara won't be like Christophilus. The planet exists in perpetual darkness due to the Ghost Nebula blocking its sun. The native Umbarans are technologically advanced and have sided with the Separatists. Their weapons, their soldiers, their entire defense grid is designed to exploit the darkness. And the terrain?" He paused, accessing images on his datapad. "Carnivorous plants, poisonous atmosphere in some regions, limited visibility. It's going to be brutal even by Clone Wars standards." "Darkness is an advantage only to those who fear it," Kratos replied. "I have walked through Hades itself, fought in realms where light was a distant memory. Your Umbara holds no terror for one who has experienced true darkness." Within hours, the base was stripped, loaded, and abandoned. Clone troopers filed into transport ships in organized columns, their white armor soon to be tested against a world that existed in shadow. Kratos boarded the Resolute alongside Rex's battalion, his presence among the clones now familiar enough that they made space for him without the initial fear that had marked their first encounters. The journey through hyperspace was subdued. Clone troopers checked equipment, shared stories, engaged in the dark humor that soldiers used to process upcoming danger. Some played sabacc. Others cleaned weapons that were already spotless. A few, fives among them, sat in quiet contemplation, their body language carrying the weight of questions that had no easy answers. Captain Rex found Kratos in the cargo bay, where the Spartan had claimed a corner away from the main troop areas. The clone captain carried 2 ration packs, a ritual that had developed between them. Thought you might want food before we hit Umbara. Once we're planetside, hot meals become a luxury. Kratos accepted the ration, recognizing the gesture for what it was, a warrior's respect for another warrior, regardless of origin or allegiance. They ate in companionable silence before Rex spoke again, his voice carrying uncertainty that would have been unthinkable when they first met. I've been thinking about what you said, about choice versus programming, about being warriors instead of weapons. Rex removed his helmet, meeting Kratos' gaze directly. I talked to some of the other captains. Cody, Wolf, Bly. Mentioned some of your ideas about clone autonomy. You know what they said? That I speak dangerous words that undermine military order, Kratos guessed. Actually, they said they'd been thinking the same things, but never voiced them because Rex struggled with the words. Because if we're not soldiers serving the Republic, then what are we? If we question our purpose, we risk losing the only identity we've ever had. It's easier to accept the role we were given than to face the possibility that we're something else entirely. Identity given is fragile, Kratos observed. Identity claimed through choice is unbreakable. Your brothers fear the void that comes with questioning, but on the other side of that void is true selfhood. Terrifying, uncertain, but yours alone. What if we question and find nothing? Rex asked quietly. What if we strip away the programming, the training, the purpose we were created for, and discover we're just empty? Just genetic copies with no real substance? The Spartan was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. When I broke free from Ares, when I killed the gods who had controlled my life, I asked myself the same question. Without rage, without vengeance, without the identity of Ghost of Sparta that had defined me for centuries, what remained? He met Rex's eyes. The answer is that what remains is enough. You are not empty, Captain. You are whatever you choose to become once the imposed purposes are stripped away. That choice, that agency, is what separates warriors from weapons. Before Rex could respond, the ship's alert system activated. The pilot's voice echoed through the transport. Exiting hyperspace in 2 minutes. All personnel prepare for combat deployment. Umbara airspace is contested. Expect hostile fire immediately upon arrival. The transformation was immediate. Rex's helmet went back on, his posture shifting from contemplative soldier to combat-ready captain. Around them, clones secured equipment, charged weapons, formed into their designated squads. The questions about identity and purpose were shelved, not forgotten, but postponed until survival was assured. The Resolute lurched as it dropped from hyperspace, and through the ship's viewports, Umbra appeared, a dark sphere wreathed in shadow, barely visible against the Ghost Nebula's murky backdrop. The planet's surface was illuminated only by bioluminescent plant life and the flashes of ongoing combat as Republic forces already engaged Umbran defenders. All gunships launch, Anakin's voice commanded over the fleet channel. We've got a narrow window to establish landing zones. Move fast, hit hard, and watch for Umbran starfighters. They're designed for this environment, and we're not. The Resolute's hangar bay opened, and LAT gunships screamed into the darkness. Kratos found himself in a transport alongside Rex, Fives, Echo, Hardcase, and a dozen other clone troopers. The ship shuddered as it plunged into Umbara's atmosphere, immediately taking fire from ground-based weapons that tracked their descent with unsettling accuracy. Through the gunship's open bay doors, the Spartans saw Umbara's landscape for the first time, an alien nightmare of bioluminescent flora that pulsed with sickly light, massive carnivorous plants that moved with predatory purpose, and thick fog that reduced visibility to mere meters. Tracer fire crisscrossed the darkness, clone forces trading shots with Umbaran militia, whose weapons glowed with unnatural purple energy. A gunship to their left took a direct hit from an Umbaran anti-aircraft battery, exploding in a fireball that briefly illuminated the horrifying landscape before darkness swallowed it again. Kratos heard the clone pilot's voice strain with effort. Taking heavy fire. We're not going to make the primary landing zone. Recommend secondary coordinates. An explosion rocked their gunship, alarms shrieking as critical systems failed. The pilot's voice turned desperate. We're hit! Losing altitude! Brace for emergency landing! The transport plummeted through Umbara's darkness, spinning out of control. Clone troopers grabbed crash webbing, while Kratos simply planted his feet, his enhanced balance allowing him to remain standing through forces that should have thrown him like a doll. The ground rushed up impossibly fast, bioluminescent plants creating a surreal landscape of living light and shadow. They hit hard, the gunship's frame crumpling but absorbing enough impact that the passengers survived. Kratos was thrown forward, his shoulder punching through the cockpit's reinforced transparent steel. Around him, clones groaned and struggled to their feet, checking themselves and each other for injuries. Sound off, Rex commanded, his training overriding the ringing in his ears. Echo! Here, sir. Bruised but functional. Fives. Present. My everything hurts, but I'm mobile. Hard case. Still alive, unfortunately for the enemy. One by one, the squad reported in. 2 clones were unconscious but breathing. One had a broken arm. The rest were battered but combat capable. The pilot and co-pilot were dead, their bodies crushed when the cockpit collapsed on impact. Kratos extracted himself from the wreckage, chains clinking softly as he assessed their situation. They'd crashed in what appeared to be a clearing surrounded by massive, pulsing vegetation that moved with disturbing sentience. The fog was thick enough to cut, and the only light came from the plants themselves in distant flashes of combat. Where are we? Echo asked, attempting to raise their position on his comm. I'm getting nothing but static. The fog's interfering with communications. We're separated from the main force, Rex said, his tactical mind already adapting to the situation. No comms means no support. We need to link up with friendly forces. But in this darkness and fog, he looked at Kratos. Sir, can you see in these conditions? The Spartan's eyes had adjusted immediately, divine constitution adapting to environments that would cripple mortal perception. I see movement in the vegetation, multiple contacts approaching from 3 directions. Your enemy knows we've crashed and is moving to eliminate survivors. Defensive positions, Rex ordered. Use the gunship wreckage as cover. Wounded to the center, prepare for contact. The clones moved with practiced efficiency despite their injuries, establishing a defensive perimeter around the crashed transport. Their blasters tracked movement in the fog, but the darkness and Umbara's alien landscape made target identification nearly impossible for human eyes designed for lighter environments. Then the Umbarans attacked. They emerged from the fog like ghosts, their armor designed to blend perfectly with the darkness. Millicreep soldiers wearing full environmental suits moved with eerie silence, their weapons crackling with purple energy that left after images in the dark. Behind them, larger shapes, Umbaran hover tanks that glided above the ground on repulsor technology, their cannons already charging. Contact! All directions! Fives shouted, his blaster firing at shadows that moved too quickly to track. The battle devolved into chaos. Clone troopers fought enemies they could barely see, their white armor making them perfect targets while the Umbarans faded into darkness. Purple energy bolts sizzled through the air, hitting clone positions with devastating accuracy. The hover tanks unleashed cannon fire that turned wreckage into shrapnel. Kratos moved through the confusion like a predator in familiar terrain. His enhanced vision tracked Umbaran positions that the clones couldn't perceive. His blades carved through the darkness, each strike finding targets the darkness should have hidden. The Umbarans, used to fighting enemies blinded by their environment, encountered something their tactics weren't designed to counter, a warrior who had fought in realms where Umbra's darkness would be considered well lit. A Millicreep soldier raised their weapon toward Rex's exposed position. Kratos' chain extended impossibly far, wrapping around the Umbaran's neck and yanking them backward. The soldier's weapon discharged harmlessly into the fog before the Spartan's blade ended the threat. Fall back to secondary position, Rex commanded, recognizing their defensive perimeter was being overwhelmed. Fighting retreat, cover each other. But retreat in Umbara's landscape was treacherous. The bioluminescent plants weren't just decoration. Some were actively carnivorous. A clone trooper stumbled too close to a massive pod that suddenly opened, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. Tentacle-like vines shot out, wrapping around the soldier's leg. Kratos' blades severed the vines before they could pull the clone into the plant's maw. "Your battlefield is hostile beyond the enemy soldiers," he warned. "The planet itself seeks to consume you. Watch where you step." The clones retreated through a nightmare landscape of living darkness, fighting enemies ahead and carnivorous plants on all sides. Fives went down hard. His leg caught in some kind of sticky organic webbing produced by fungal growths. Echo turned back to help his brother, exposing himself to Umbaran fire. A purple energy bolt struck Echo's chest, the impact throwing him backward. His armor absorbed most of the hit, but the clone trooper lay stunned and vulnerable. An Umbaran soldier advanced for the kill, their weapon trained on the fallen clone. They never took the shot. Kratos appeared between them and Echo, moving faster than the Umbaran's night vision could track. His blade punched through the soldier's environmental suit, and they collapsed without a sound. "Get up!" the Spartan commanded, hauling both Fives and Echo to their feet with strength that seemed impossible given his injuries. Warriors do not die lying down. The retreat continued, the clones fighting a desperate action through hostile terrain against an enemy perfectly adapted to these conditions. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and rapidly running out of ammunition. Rex's tactical mind calculated probability of survival and came up with numbers that would have broken lesser soldiers' will. Then, through the fog and darkness, new sounds emerged, the familiar hum of Republic gunships and the distinctive white-blue of clone blaster fire. Relief forces had tracked their crash and fought through Umbaran lines to reach them. Obi-Wan Kenobi descended from a gunship, his lightsaber casting blue illumination that seemed impossibly bright in Umbara's perpetual night. "Captain Rex, report." "We're battered but functional, General," Rex responded, never more grateful to see a Jedi. "Lost the pilots and 2 men. The rest are wounded but mobile. We'd be dead if Kratos hadn't." He gestured to where the Spartan stood, surrounded by Umbaran bodies and carnivorous plants he'd cut down with equal efficiency. Obi-Wan took in the scene, a crashed gunship, exhausted clones, and one warrior who looked like he'd personally fought off an entire Umbaran battalion, which based on the evidence, he essentially had. "Let's save the full debrief for when we're not standing in a kill zone," the Jedi Master said. "Everyone on the gunships. We've established a forward position 2 clicks from here. It's not safe, but it's safer than this." The survivors boarded relief transports, grateful for extraction, but knowing this was just the beginning. Umbra would test them in ways Christophilus never had. The darkness, the hostile environment, the perfectly adapted enemy. This was war on the enemy's terms, in conditions designed to negate Republic advantages. As the gunships lifted from that hellish clearing, Kratos looked down at Umbra's landscape, an alien world of living darkness and death around every corner. He'd fought in Helheim, in the depths of Hades, in realms where light was a forgotten concept. This planet wasn't worse than those places, but it was close, and somewhere in that darkness, General Grievous was preparing his next assault. The cyborg had tracked the Spartans' redeployment to Umbara and followed, seeing opportunity in a battlefield where visibility was limited and terrain was hostile. The hunt was about to enter its deadliest phase. The Republic forward operating base on Umbra existed as an island of light in an ocean of predatory darkness. Massive floodlights surrounded the perimeter, their harsh illumination creating a boundary between relative safety and the hostile alien landscape beyond. Clone troopers manned defensive positions with nervous energy, their eyes constantly scanning the fog for movement. On Umbara, the darkness wasn't empty. It was full of things that wanted to kill you. Kratos stood at the perimeter's edge, where light met shadow. His wounds from the crash and subsequent battle had been treated, but true healing would take days his divine constitution didn't have. Every engagement since arriving in this galaxy had added layers of damage. Blaster burns, lightsaber cuts, force lightning scars, and now the toxic residue from Umbaran energy weapons that caused tissue necrosis if left untreated. He was wearing down, not defeated, not even close, but the accumulated toll of constant combat without respite was evident. For the first time since arriving in the Star Wars galaxy, Kratos felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries, genuine physical fatigue that rest alone wouldn't cure. You should be in the medical bay, Captain Rex said, approaching with that mixture of concern and tactical assessment that defined his leadership. Kix says you've got Umbran weapon toxins in your bloodstream. They're designed to cause progressive tissue death. Even with your enhanced biology, you need treatment. I have endured worse, Kratos replied, the statement automatic but less convincing than usual. Poison from the Hydra's blood, venom from Arachne's children, corruption from the river Styx itself. These toxins are painful but not fatal. Not fatal yet, Rex corrected. Sir, with respect, you've been in constant combat since Christophilus. Your body can only take so much punishment before even your healing can't keep up. You're no good to anyone dead. The Spartan turned to face the clone captain, reading genuine concern rather than tactical calculation. Rex wasn't worried about losing an asset. He was worried about losing someone he'd come to consider, if not a friend, then at least a brother in arms. It was a sentiment Kratos hadn't experienced in longer than he cared to remember. Your concern is noted, Captain, Kratos said, his harsh voice carrying unexpected gentleness. But I have learned that warriors survive by moving forward, not by stopping to count wounds. The moment I rest is the moment I acknowledge vulnerability. And the moment I acknowledge vulnerability is when enemies strike. That's not sustainable, Rex argued. Even the best warriors need recovery time. Push too hard and you break. I've seen it happen to brothers who thought they were invincible. They kept fighting through injuries, through exhaustion, until their bodies just gave out, usually at the worst possible moment. Before Kratos could respond, alarms shattered the conversation. But these weren't attack warnings. These were communications alerts. Something major was happening. Rex's comm crackled to life with urgent chatter, multiple clone commanders talking over each other. General Krell has assumed command. Obi-Wan and Anakin recalled to Coruscant. New tactical directives effective immediately. Rex's body language shifted to rigid attention, his training overriding personal concerns. I need to report to the command center. You should, well, you'll do what you want. But sir, please at least get the toxins flushed. You can't fight if your organs are shutting down. The captain departed at a run, leaving Kratos alone at the perimeter. The Spartan considered the advice, recognizing its wisdom even as his instincts screamed to remain ready for combat. Compromise was difficult for one who had survived by refusing to yield, but perhaps the clone captain's point had merit. He turned toward the medical bay, chains clinking softly with each step. The medical facility was overwhelmed with casualties from the initial Umbara assault. Clone troopers lay on cots, their injuries ranging from minor burns to catastrophic wounds that even Bacta struggled to heal. Kix moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, triaging patients and directing medical droids with the authority of someone who'd saved countless lives under impossible conditions. You actually came, Kix said, surprise evident as Kratos entered. I was placing bets with Korik that you'd ignore medical advice and keep fighting until you collapsed. Glad I lost that one. He gestured to an examination table reinforced for heavy equipment. Sit. Let me run diagnostics on the Umbran toxins. The Spartans submitted to examination with poorly concealed impatience. Kix's scanners revealed extensive toxic contamination, the Umbran weapon's energy leaving traces that actively destroyed cellular tissue. In a normal human, such contamination would be fatal within hours. In Kratos, it was causing progressive damage his healing factors struggled to counteract. I'm going to administer a broad-spectrum antitoxin, Kix explained, preparing an injector. It won't eliminate the contamination completely. These Umbran compounds are nasty, but it'll slow the progression enough for your natural healing to catch up. You'll need follow-up treatments every 8 hours. I will not be available every 8 hours, Kratos stated flatly. Then you'll die in maybe 3 days instead of 8, Kix replied with the blunt honesty of a medic who delivered too much bad news to soften it. Your choice, sir. But speaking as someone who's patched you up multiple times now, you're not invincible. Your body is extraordinary, but it has limits. You're approaching them. The injector hissed as it delivered the antitoxin directly into Kratos' bloodstream. The Spartan felt immediate effects, pain lessening, tissue regeneration accelerating, the creeping necrosis halting its advance. Not eliminated, but manageable. He'd fought through worse handicaps. There's something else you should know, Kix said quietly, glancing around to ensure privacy. The new commander, Jedi General Pong Krell, he has a reputation. Brutal tactics, high casualty rates, treats clones as expendable resources rather than soldiers. The brothers who've served under him before, he hesitated. They say he doesn't see us as people, just numbers on a tactical display. Kratos' expression darkened with familiar anger. Another commander who treats warriors as weapons to be expended. Exactly, and sir, if he orders operations that are clearly designed to get clones killed for minimal tactical gain, we don't have the authority to refuse. We're soldiers. We follow orders, even orders that will kill us. Kix's voice carried bitter resignation. That's what we were made for, right? To die when our generals decide it's necessary? The question hung in the air, heavy with the philosophical weight of previous conversations. Before Kratos could respond, Rex burst into the medical bay, his body language radiating controlled fury. Emergency briefing in 5 minutes, the captain announced. General Krell wants all officers present. He's planning an immediate assault on the Umbaran capital. Rex's helmet prevented reading his expression, but his tone conveyed everything. The plan is aggressive, really aggressive. Some might say suicidally aggressive. Then it is a plan designed to waste lives for glory, Kratos stated, standing from the examination table. I have seen such commanders before. They seek reputation through sacrifice of those they consider beneath them. We don't have a choice, Rex said, frustration evident. He's the general. We're soldiers. The chain of command is only as valid as you allow it to be, Kratos interrupted. If your general orders you to die for his vanity rather than victory, you have the choice to refuse. Or have you forgotten our conversations about being warriors versus weapons? Rex's hands clenched into fists. It's not that simple. If we refuse orders, we're traitors. We'd be court-martialed, imprisoned, maybe executed. And for what? To make a point about autonomy while our brothers die following those same orders? Sometimes the only way to save warriors from corrupt leadership is to remove that leadership, Kratos said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd done exactly that. I have killed commanders who spent soldiers' lives like currency. I have overthrown authorities who believe their rank absolved them of consequences. Your General Krell is not divine. He is not unkillable. He is simply one being with temporary authority. That's treason, Rex stated, but his voice lacked conviction. It is justice. Whether your republic recognizes, the difference is irrelevant. They were interrupted by the arrival of other clone officers, Commander Cody, Captain Gregor, and several battalion leaders whose armor showed fresh damage from recent engagements. All headed toward the command center where General Krell awaited. Rex exchanged glances with his fellow officers, unspoken communication passing between brothers who'd shared too many battles to need words. The command center had been transformed by Krell's presence. The basilisk Jedi stood at the holotable, his massive form and 4 arms creating an imposing silhouette. His face carried cruel intelligence, eyes that assessed clone officers as one might assess equipment. When he spoke, his voice resonated with authority that expected obedience. Gentlemen, our objective is the Umbaran capital. Intelligence indicates heavy defensive fortifications, aerial support, and entrenched militia forces. Standard siege tactics would take weeks. We don't have weeks. Krell activated the tactical display, showing a route through Umbra's hostile terrain directly toward the capital. We will execute a direct assault along this vector. Fast, aggressive, overwhelming force. Commander Cody studied the proposed route, his tactical mind immediately identifying problems. Sir, that path takes us through the impeding assault ridge, densest concentration of hostile flora and fauna on Umbara. Our forces would be vulnerable to environmental hazards before even engaging the enemy. Then they'll learn to move faster, Krell replied dismissively. The Umbrans expect us to approach cautiously, avoiding natural hazards. By charging through them, we achieve surprise. At what cost? Rex asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sir, our men are already exhausted from the initial landing. Pushing through hostile terrain without proper rest or resupply? Are you questioning my orders, Captain? Krell's voice dropped dangerously. Because I was under the impression that clone troopers were bred to follow commands, not debate strategy with their superiors. The room went silent. Every clone officer felt the disrespect, the casual dismissal of their expertise and lives. Kratos, standing at the room's periphery, watched the dynamics with cold assessment. This Krell was exactly as Kix had described, a commander who saw clones as expendable resources rather than warriors deserving respect. "We're following orders, General," Rex said finally, his professionalism a mask over anger. "But with respect, we have battlefield experience on Umbara. The terrain is more dangerous than intelligence reports suggest. Perhaps a modified approach—" "I am not interested in suggestions from manufactured soldiers," Krell interrupted. "You were created to follow orders, nothing more. The Jedi Council has entrusted me with this operation, and I will execute it as I see fit. Your role is to obey. Now deployment begins in 2 hours. Dismissed." The clone officers filed out in rigid silence, their body language radiating suppressed fury. In the corridor outside, away from Krell's hearing, that fury found voice. "He's going to get us all killed," Five stated bluntly. "That assault plan is suicide. Even if we take the capital, the casualties will be catastrophic." "But he's the general," Echo replied, the words tasting like ashes. "We're soldiers. We follow orders." "Even orders designed to waste our lives?" Hardcase demanded. "How is that different from the separatists treating battle droids as expendable? At least the droids don't know any better." Rex raised a hand for silence, his command presence reasserting control. "Everyone calm down. Yes, the plan is aggressive. Yes, casualties will be high. But we've survived worse odds before. We're the best soldiers in the galaxy because we adapt, we overcome, and we protect our brothers. That's what we'll do now." "That's what Krell is counting on," Kratos said, his voice cutting through the clones' debate. "He knows your loyalty to each other will drive you to attempt the impossible. He will use that loyalty to spend your lives achieving objectives that serve his reputation rather than military necessity." "What are you suggesting?" Cody asked, his tone carefully neutral. "That we refuse orders?" "I am suggesting you remember you are warriors, not property," Kratos replied. "Your republic created you for war, but that creation does not obligate you to die for commanders who hold you in contempt. There are times when the only honorable choice is to say no." "That's desertion," Rex said, though his voice lacked the conviction it once would have carried. "We'd be traitors to the Republic. Or saviors of your brothers from a commander who has already betrayed them," Kratos countered. "You speak of honor and duty, but what honor exists in following orders you know are designed to maximize casualties? What duty requires you to die for a general's vanity?" The clones exchanged glances, centuries of conditioning warring with awakening awareness. They'd been created to obey, trained to follow orders without question, designed to be the perfect soldiers. But weeks of exposure to Kratos' philosophy had planted seeds that couldn't be uprooted. The understanding that choice existed, that autonomy was possible, that they were more than weapons. "We need more information," Cody said finally, his tactical mind seeking middle ground. "If Krell's plan is genuinely suicidal versus merely aggressive, we need evidence. Concrete data showing the assault will fail." "And if we get that evidence?" Fives pressed. "What then? We still can't refuse orders without consequences." "Then we find a way to succeed despite the plan," Rex stated firmly. "We adapt on the ground, make tactical decisions that maximize survival, protect our brothers even if we can't protect ourselves. That's what warriors do." It wasn't the open rebellion Kratos had suggested, but it was evolution, clone troopers learning to work around rather than blindly follow orders. It was survival through adaptation, the first step toward genuine autonomy. 2 hours until deployment," Rex continued. "Everyone prep your squads. Check equipment, review the terrain data, establish contingency plans. And remember, we're not fighting for General Krell. We're fighting for each other." As the officers dispersed to their units, Kratos remained with Rex. The clone captain looked at the Spartan, his helmet preventing facial expression, but his body language conveying conflict. "You think we're cowards," Rex said quietly, "for not refusing Krell's orders outright. I think you are products of conditioning fighting to become something more," Kratos replied. "Cowardice would be accepting your role without question. You question. You seek alternatives. You prioritize your brothers over blind obedience. That is not cowardice, it is awakening. But awakening is painful, and incomplete awakening is often worse than remaining asleep. What do you mean? You have learned enough to recognize injustice, but not enough to act decisively against it. You see the chains, but cannot yet bring yourself to break them. This middle ground, this attempt to serve corrupt authority while protecting those it abuses, will eventually force a choice, and when that moment comes, you will either become true warriors or remain obedient weapons until your deaths. Rex had no response, because deep down, he knew Kratos was right. 2 hours later, the assault began. Clone troopers marched into Umbra's darkness, following a plan designed by a general who considered them expendable. And among them walked the ghost of Sparta, watching warriors struggle toward freedom they weren't yet brave enough to claim. The battle for Umbra was about to become something far more than a military engagement. It was about to become the moment when manufactured soldiers learned the true cost of obedience and the true price of choosing otherwise. The assault through Umbra's impeding assault ridge was everything the clone officers had feared, and worse than even their pessimistic predictions. General Krell's plan threw battalions of clone troopers into a nightmarish landscape where every shadow concealed death and every step forward cost lives. Carnivorous plants erupted from the fog without warning, their crystalline teeth snapping shut on troopers who couldn't react fast enough. Poisonous spores released by disturbed fungi filled the air, forcing clones to seal their helmets and rely on limited oxygen reserves. The bioluminescent flora that provided the only illumination also attracted swarms of flying predators, creatures native to Umbara that saw armored soldiers as prey. And through it all, Umbaran militia forces harassed the Republic advance with hit-and-run tactics perfectly suited to the environment. They would materialize from the darkness, unleash devastating volleys of purple energy weapons, then vanish before Republic forces could effectively return fire. Clone casualties mounted with horrifying speed. We've lost 30% of our fighting strength, and we haven't even reached the outer defensive perimeter, Rex reported over the command channel, his voice strained with barely controlled fury. General Krell, we need to reassess the approach vector. Negative, Captain. Krell's response came back cold and dismissive. Maintain the assault. Casualties are acceptable for the strategic objective. Press forward. Kratos fought at the vanguard alongside the clone troopers, his enhanced vision and combat experience making him one of the few effective soldiers in Umbra's hostile environment. His blades of chaos carved through both Umbran forces and the planet's carnivorous flora with equal efficiency. But even he could see the tactical insanity of Krell's plan. This wasn't war, it was slaughter disguised as strategy. Fall back to that ridge formation. Kratos commanded a squad whose officer had been killed by an Umbran sniper. The clones hesitated. The scarred warrior wasn't in their chain of command, but desperation overrode protocol. They retreated to the defensive position Kratos indicated, a crystal outcropping that provided cover from 3 directions. Sir, our orders are to advance, one trooper stated, caught between conflicting imperatives. Your orders will get you killed for no gain, Kratos replied, scanning the darkness for threats. Defend this position. Let the enemy come to you. Survival is victory when the alternative is pointless death. The clones took defensive positions, their training accepting the tactical wisdom even as it contradicted their general's commands. Within minutes, Umbaran forces attacked the position and found themselves funneled into a kill zone where clone troopers could actually see their targets and concentrate fire effectively. The enemy withdrew after taking significant casualties, leaving the clone squad intact. Across the battlefield, other clone officers were making similar tactical deviations. Captain Rex ignored orders to charge across exposed ground, instead using covering fire and bound and overwatch techniques to minimize casualties. Commander Cody established fallback positions against explicit orders, creating defensive depth that saved squads from being surrounded and annihilated. The clone troopers were learning to fight smart instead of obedient, to serve each other rather than their general's ego. But each tactical deviation was a small act of rebellion, a crack in the absolute obedience they'd been engineered to provide. And General Krell, observing the battle from his command post, noticed these deviations with cold calculation. Captain Rex, Commander Cody, report to my position immediately. Krell's voice cut through the command channel like a blade. Rex exchanged glances with Fives and Echo, who'd stayed close to their captain throughout the assault. "This is it," the captain said quietly. "He's going to call us out for tactical deviations. Maybe court-martial us. Then maybe it's time we stop caring what he thinks," Fives replied, his voice carrying new certainty. "We saved brothers today by ignoring his orders. That counts for more than his approval." They made their way back through the darkness to Krell's command position, a fortified bunker established well behind the front lines, safe from the combat he'd ordered his soldiers into. The general stood reviewing tactical displays, his forearms making notations with stylus-equipped fingers. When the clone officers entered, he didn't immediately acknowledge them, a power play designed to emphasize rank disparity. Finally, Krell looked up, his expression radiating cold displeasure. "You deliberately disobeyed direct orders? Multiple times. You altered assault vectors, established unauthorized defensive positions, and prioritized clone survival over objective achievement. With respect, General," Rex began carefully, "we adapted to battlefield conditions. The casualties from your original plan would have been acceptable." Krell's voice thundered through the command bunker. "You were given orders. Your role is to execute those orders, not to question them based on your limited tactical understanding. I am a Jedi General. I see the bigger picture. Your job is to obey. Our job is to win battles while keeping as many brothers alive as possible," Cody stated, his voice level but carrying steel beneath. "Sir, we achieved the territorial objectives with 40% fewer casualties than projected. That's success by any reasonable metric." "Reasonable metric," Krell repeated mockingly. "You presume to lecture me on military success? You're clones, manufactured soldiers programmed to fight and die. Your opinions on tactics are irrelevant. Your purpose is obedience." His expression hardened further. "I am placing both of you on notice. One more deviation from direct orders, and I will have you court-martialed for insubordination and treason. Do I make myself clear?" The clone officers stood at rigid attention, their body language revealing nothing of the rage and disgust churning beneath professional facades. "Crystal clear, sir," Rex said, each word carefully neutral. "Dismissed." They exited the command bunker in controlled silence, but once outside in Umbara's darkness, that control fractured. "He threatened court-martial for saving brothers' lives," Fives said, his voice shaking with fury, "for tactical decisions that achieved his objectives with fewer casualties. What kind of commander?" "The kind who sees us as property," Rex interrupted bitterly. "Kratos tried to warn us. We're not soldiers to Krell. We're resources to be expended. And when resources question their expenditure, they become problems to be eliminated." "So what do?" Echo asked. "We can't refuse orders without consequences. But following them means more brothers die unnecessarily. There's no good choice." "There's always a choice," Kratos' voice emerged from the shadows, the Spartan materializing from darkness, like his new title suggested. "You simply fear the consequences of making it." "Easy for you to say," Five snapped, frustration overwhelming respect. "You don't have inhibitor chips, conditioning, entire systems designed to punish independent thought. You're not property that thinks it's people." The outburst hung in the air, raw and honest. Kratos regarded the clone trooper with something approaching sympathy, an emotion he rarely displayed. "You are correct. I do not carry your specific burdens, but I have been property. I was a slave to the gods, my will subsumed to their purposes, my actions determined by powers beyond my control. I know what it costs to break those chains." "What did it cost?" Rex asked quietly. "Everything," Kratos replied simply. "My family, my home, my humanity for a time. Breaking free from those who owned me required becoming a monster worse than they were. It required killing beings I'd once served, destroying institutions I'd once believed in, walking away from everyone and everything to forge my own path." His scarred face carried the weight of those costs. "Freedom is never free. The question is whether the price is worth paying." Before anyone could respond, new alarms shattered the moment. But these weren't attack warnings. These were panic signals. Across the battlefield, clone comm channels erupted with desperate chatter. "Friendly fire! We're taking fire from Republic forces." Clones in 212th armor engaging us. They won't respond to hails. General Krell ordered us to attack coordinates that turned out to be our own men. The realization hit like physical blow. Somehow, through intentional misdirection or catastrophic intelligence failure, clone battalions were fighting each other in Umbera's darkness, each believing the other to be Umberan forces in stolen armor. All units, cease fire! Cease fire! Rex was already running toward the engagement zone, his voice desperate over the command channel. We're fighting our own men! Stand down! Kratos followed, chains clinking as he sprinted through hostile terrain. Around them, the truth of Krell's betrayal became horrifyingly clear. The general hadn't made a mistake. He deliberately orchestrated fratricide. Whether through dark side corruption or personal malice, he'd turned clone troopers against each other. They reached the killing ground to find nightmare made real. Clone troopers in different battalion colors lay dead or dying, having fought their brothers in darkness that prevented recognition until too late. Survivors stood in shock, weapons lowered, horror replacing training as they comprehended what they'd done. Waxer, a veteran trooper from the 212th, lay dying with multiple blaster wounds to his chest. Rex knelt beside him, removing the trooper's helmet to reveal a face identical to his own, genetically if not in experience. Waxer, stay with me. Medic! We thought you were Umberans, Waxer gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. Krell said, He said enemy forces were disguised in clone armor. We were following orders. His eyes found Rex's. Brother, I'm sorry. Waxer died in Rex's arms, one more casualty of obedience to corrupt authority. Around them, dozens of clones from both battalions lay dead or wounded. Brothers who'd survived separatist forces, hostile environment, and Umberan militia, only to die fighting each other because a general had ordered it. This was intentional, Commander Cody said, his voice hollowed by realization. Krell deliberately sent us against each other. This wasn't intelligence failure, it was murder. Fives' hands clenched around his blaster so hard the weapon's frame creaked. He killed our brothers. He ordered us to kill each other. And we followed those orders because we're programmed to obey without question. No more, Rex stated, his voice carrying absolute certainty, forged in grief and rage. No more blind obedience. No more following orders that violate every code we claim to honor. Krell is going down. That's treason, Echo said reflexively, but his voice carried no conviction, just the echo of conditioning that no longer held power. Then we're traitors, Rex replied, but we're traitors who won't let another brother die for that monster's entertainment. Who's with me? Every clone in hearing range responded affirmatively. The conditioning that had defined their existence for their entire lives shattered in that moment, replaced by choice, by rage, by the understanding that some orders were worse than death to follow. He's a Jedi, Cody warned. Even a Jedi we hate is formidable. And we're clones. We don't have the Force, don't have enhanced abilities. Going against him directly. You have me, Kratos stated, stepping forward. I have killed Force users. I have overthrown gods who believe themselves untouchable. Your General Krell is neither god nor invincible. He is simply one being who has finally revealed his true nature. And beings who prey upon those weaker than themselves learn the same lesson across every realm. There is always something stronger, something angrier, something that refuses to accept their authority. Rex looked at the Spartan, then at his brothers. Clones from multiple battalions, united in grief and fury. We do this smart. We arrest Krell, bring him before military tribunal for war crimes. Let the Republic's own justice system. The Republic created you to be slaves and will defend any general who treats you as such, Kratos interrupted harshly. Your justice system serves those in power. It will not serve you. Maybe, Rex acknowledged, but we're still soldiers. We do this by the book, or we're no better than him. We gather evidence, document the fratricide, arrest him legally, then we let military justice decide his fate. It was compromise between rebellion and obedience, between the warrior's code Kratos advocated and the system the clones still partially believed in. The Spartan recognized it as such. Not perfect, but perhaps necessary for warriors learning to exercise autonomy for the first time. Then move quickly, Kratos advised. Corrupt authority, when threatened, becomes desperate. And desperate Jedi are dangerous beyond measure. The clone troopers advanced on General Krell's command bunker with grim purpose. This was uncharted territory, clones acting against a Jedi general of their own initiative. Every step violated conditioning, challenged programming, asserted autonomy that wasn't supposed to exist. They were becoming what Kratos had told them they could be, warriors instead of weapons. But Krell, isolated in his command post, felt the shift through the Force. He smiled darkly, hand moving to his double-bladed lightsaber. These manufactured soldiers thought they could challenge a Jedi? He would teach them the cost of such presumption. And outside the bunker, Kratos prepared for the confrontation he'd been anticipating since meeting the Bassalis general. He'd fought Jedi before. He'd killed beings who channeled cosmic powers beyond mortal understanding. General Pong Krell was about to learn what happened when divine wrath met those who treated warriors as disposable property. The final battle on Umbara was beginning, not against separatist forces, but against the corruption within the Republic itself. The confrontation with General Krell became legend among clone troopers. A story passed in whispers through barracks across the galaxy. The Basilisk Jedi fought with the fury of the dark side he'd secretly embraced, his 4 arms wielding dual double-bladed lightsabers in a storm of plasma death. He killed 17 clone troopers before Kratos reached him, each death fueling the Spartans' cold rage. When the ghost of Sparta finally cornered Krell in the darkness of Umbara's hostile jungle, the battle was brief and brutal. The Jedi's precognition, his force powers, his 4-armed advantage, none of it mattered against a being who had killed gods. Kratos disabled him with methodical efficiency, breaking 3 of Krell's 4 arms and destroying his lightsabers before the clones could arrive to witness the fallen general's capture. Captain Rex wanted military justice. Kratos saw it delivered in older, more permanent fashion, but respected the captain's authority enough to let the clones make their own choice. In the end, Dogma, a clone who'd believed in obedience until his faith shattered, executed Krell with a single blaster shot. Justice served by those most betrayed. The Republic covered up much of what happened on Umbara. Official reports called it tactical difficulties and unfortunate intelligence failures. But the clone troopers knew the truth, and more importantly, they knew they could choose, could refuse orders, could act on their own judgment, could be warriors instead of weapons. Rex's battalion completed the Umbra campaign under temporary command of Jedi General Anakin Skywalker, who returned to find his men changed. They still fought with devastating efficiency, still protected each other with absolute dedication, but something fundamental had shifted. They questioned now. They assessed. They chose. Kratos remained with them through the final assault on the Umbaran capital, his presence a constant reminder of what they become. When the planet fell to Republic control, when the inevitable orders came to redeploy to yet another battlefield in the endless war, Rex approached the Spartan one final time. "You're not coming with us to the next engagement," the captain observed. It wasn't a question. "No," Kratos confirmed. "I have learned what I needed to learn about your galaxy. Your war is orchestrated by powers hidden in shadows. I can feel their manipulation even if I cannot touch their force. Your clone brothers are waking to their bondage, but waking is not freedom. That battle is yours to fight, not mine." "Where will you go?" The Spartan looked up at Umbara's perpetually dark sky, toward stars he didn't recognize. "I will find those who orchestrate this war. Your Count Dooku, his mysterious master, the powers that created you in this conflict. I will understand their purposes. And if those purposes threaten what I have come to protect," his chains shifted, flames flickering. "They will learn what I taught Olympus. That power without accountability inevitably meets something it cannot control." Rex removed his helmet, meeting Kratos' gaze with eyes that had seen too much but remained unbroken. "We wouldn't have survived Umbara without you. More than that, we wouldn't have woken up without you. Fives, Echo, Hardcase, all of us. We're thinking now instead of just obeying. I don't know if that's a gift or a curse, but it's real." "It is both," Kratos replied. "Awareness brings pain, but also possibility. You asked me once if you were warriors or weapons. Now you know the answer. You are whatever you choose to become." The conditioning remains, but it no longer owns you. That is all any warrior can ask for. They clasped forearms in the warrior's grip that transcended galaxies and cultures. Then Kratos turned away, walking into Umbra's darkness without looking back. The clones watched him disappear, the red ghost fading into legend. But his impact remained. Across the Grand Army of the Republic, clone troopers began questioning. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Not all would embrace the awakening. Some would cling to conditioning because choice was terrifying. But enough questioned. Enough chose. Enough became warriors. When Order 66 eventually came, when Palpatine activated the inhibitor chips that turned clones into Jedi killers, many still fell under its control. But not all. Captain Rex would have his chip removed in time. Fives would discover the conspiracy and die trying to expose it. Others would fight the programming, some successfully, others falling to compulsion but raging against it. The seeds Kratos planted wouldn't save the Jedi Order. They wouldn't prevent the fall of the Republic or the rise of the Empire. But they would save some, individual clones who remembered the scarred warrior's words, who honored his code, who chose to be warriors instead of weapons, even when that choice cost everything. As for Kratos himself, he disappeared into the galaxy's shadows. Republic intelligence occasionally reported sightings. A powerful warrior fighting separatist forces on distant worlds, always appearing where battles were most brutal, always vanishing before questions could be asked. Some claimed he hunted Sith artifacts. Others said he sought a way home to his realm. A few whispered that he'd begun eliminating the hidden powers that orchestrated the Clone Wars, though such claims were dismissed as soldier mythology. The truth was simpler and more complex. Kratos walked his path as he always had, alone, unbound, refusing to serve any cause but his own code. He protected those who couldn't protect themselves. He destroyed those who preyed on the weak. He sought understanding of the force that didn't touch him and the powers that wielded it. And when Darth Sidious, emperor of the newly formed Galactic Empire, felt a disturbance in the Force years later, a void that moved with purpose, hunting something in the darkness, the Sith Lord would remember reports of a warrior outside the Force who killed with the fury of dead gods. But that confrontation belonged to a future not yet written. For now, in the aftermath of Umbra, the ghost of Sparta walked among the stars of a galaxy far, far away. No master commanded him, no force guided him, no destiny bound him. Only choice, only will, only the eternal truth that had sustained him across realms and ages. Gods could be killed, powers could be overthrown, and warriors who refused to kneel could never truly be defeated, only temporarily delayed. The Clone Wars continued. The Republic fell, the Empire rose. But in the darkness between official histories, soldiers who'd served beside the Red Ghost told stories. They spoke of a warrior who taught them they were more than weapons, who showed them that choice existed even in systems designed to eliminate it, who proved that one being, refusing to yield, could change the galaxy simply by refusing to accept how things were. Those stories mattered, not because they altered the war's outcome, they didn't, but because they altered how warriors saw themselves. And sometimes that made all the difference. In a galaxy bound by the Force, where destiny and prophecy and ancient powers shaped civilizations, there walked one being entirely outside such influences. He carried the blood of gods on his hands and the weight of dead pantheons in his memory. He owed nothing to anyone and served only the code he'd forged through suffering. His name was Kratos. He was the ghost of Sparta, the god killer, the warrior who refused chains. And the galaxy would never be quite the same for his passage through it.